everybody. What's good? Welcome to another Hammer of Heretics live stream. I'm Hammer of Heretics, and I have a very special guest and friend here today. Why don't you introduce yourself, Jin?
Hi, my name is Jordan. I debated John in Gospel Truth Channel before. We met each other last year, and we have a great relationship. Although I'm a Protestant, I
Yep.
think we are great friends, and we have productive conversation. Although it can get heated at times, but it's always loving, and we have an amazing relationship. And I thank God so much for the relationship that we had together. But obviously, some credit goes to both of us to preserve this wonderful relationship that God has given us. So, you know, let's pat ourselves in the back.
No, Jin's a great friend and awesome colleague, and I love getting sanity checks from him when some theological conundrum comes up. I try not to stay in an echo chamber and only seek Catholic opinion or cadence. And two things we're going to talk about that are really important actually are going to be the Eucharist and apostasy. And we were just talking about this behind the scenes a little bit regarding my debate with AAC. I think you mentioned maybe getting him on again on the stream so you could talk to him. You wanted to? I'm open to it.
Or maybe I could talk to him in his channel, or he could come to my channel, perhaps. Who knows?
So he has an email. If you look on his channel, you can shoot him an email, or I can email him. Just let me know what you want to do. If you want to interview him by yourself, go for it. He's pretty open. It takes a while to respond.
I'm too lazy, so.
Okay. I can set it up. I have no problem if he doesn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
We buried Hatchet. I know, our first meeting was pretty rough. We went at it. So
But he improved well. He improved really well.
Yeah, we both buried the hatchet because I started yelling at him and stuff. So I got really heated during that first discussion.
Yeah, I can see why.
Well, I wasn't really being the way I should be, but it in the same topic was about transubstantiation. It was about the Eucharist. So that was that first discussion, and it was actually about his debate with Joshua from Heretic Apologetics.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came up, and we were just talking about this, where this conflation of the physical and the metaphysical, right? And this is the whole purpose, like you mentioned, Jen, is hey, we're here to talk about how these signs, right, these physical signs can become invisibly the body and blood, soul and divinity of Christ. And we got Acolyte Insight right here. What's up, dude?
What's up?
And
yeah. So wait. I had to cut you off. I miss. You know how long I haven't talked to Alfonso? 4 months. I'm so happy. I'm crying tears right now. Oh man, I'm so happy to see you.
It's been so long, man.
Oh, praise the Lord. Okay, go on.
Praise the Lord. It's good to see you, bro. I miss you.
Yeah, so I was just pontificating about how the mystery is. It's really, we're talking about the mystery of the Eucharist, right? We're talking about how can this be something that fools the senses, right? That only faith can understand it, as St. Thomas Aquinas put it. How can this be, and what is the best explanation, right?
Yeah, I think this is as I mentioned to you before, right? Like before we start the stream, right? The debate, what is in dispute is really about that metaphysical process or the theological explanation of the Eucharist and the sacrament, what the 7 sacraments of the Catholic Church, right, is using metaphysical process, specifically Aristotelian logic, right? The true way, right, to understand, right, the reality of the Eucharist, right? That is in dispute. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry. Many Catholics think that I'm misportraying the Catholic position. Just let me know. I'm not doing that on purpose, but that is in dispute, right? And for me, I feel like my critique, and I hope you don't take it offensively, John. And I would love to hear, also, if you watch the debate, what you think about it. I think the main what was important is to try to establish a mutual criteria, right? On the best way to determine if transubstantiation is the only way, right? It's the only true way to truly understand the reality of the universe, right? And so, both sides have to try to give proposals on a reasonable methodology, or a reasonable epistemic framework. But I feel like both of you guys didn't really do that. You guys just got into your arguments and the proof text, and I think the debate really got lost in the hermeneutics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, for me, I feel like the debate wasn't as productive. I hope AAC doesn't take what I say offensively. There are certain things that I feel that he overreached too much, and there are certain things that he should have addressed what you have said. And so, I mean, to be fair, I didn't do it with you either. But I wasn't that prepared. It seems that he's more prepared in the debate than I was, so I'll give him props for that. But yeah, what do you think?
So I think that you're right. You pointed to something very true. Is that I did bring a Eucharistic ontology. He did not have an alternative. Like, he did not have a set alternative like worldview. And I was arguing at a paradigmatic level, right? This is the Catholic paradigm. I built my whole tower. Good luck collapsing it. And he spent the whole debate basically throwing rocks, right? Like, he's like, anything but, right? Like, he brought up consubstantiation.
Wait. Did you explain how you built that tower, though? Because I don't know if you did.
It wasn't really how he explained how he built the tower. It was in his opening statement. That opening statement was the tower he built. So everything was based off of that.
But for me, what I'm saying is that before showing that tower, you have to explain how you built it and why it is rationally and theologically justified for you to build that tower in the first place. You get what I'm saying? I think that was the more core issue here. The epistemology and the method needed to be established or justified.
Right. Well, that's why I was trying to show through, I did bring up like Chalcedon, for instance, to show like, hey, for Chalcedonian Christianity, this is why this is the most apt, as the Council of Trent says. So ultimately, like I said, I brought the Catholic worldview. I brought the entirety of the Aristotelian metaphysics to explain this, and he oscillated onto different points, basically just anything but, which, again, even the negative side has a burden of proof, not just to, hey, I'm going to disprove you, but also to bring like, hey, if they're bringing a whole worldview, what is an apt alternative? Which is, again, why I baked that into my opening statement. And I even, through pro-catalepsis, I preempted his entire opening and refuted it in advance, and he just still did the same thing.
But I don't think the negative position had to show that they have a better explanatory powers. They don't, right? They simply, even if it's equal, right, it should, they can still win the debate. You know what I mean? Like, what they have to do at the very least is that their explanatory powers, right, are inferior. If they fail to show, if they get exposed that their explanatory power is inferior to yours, that they lose, right? But for me, if it's equal or superior, if their view is equal or superior, it means that they win. You get what I'm saying? Right. Or that they don't lose for sure.
So, well, what it ultimately was is the burden of proof, right? It's not just purely destructive on the negative side. They still have, if I bring an entire paradigm and I'm saying this is the way in a maximalist sense, they need to come and say, no, that's not the way. And they should ideally provide an alternative worldview, an alternative paradigm that is the alternative. And I brought that up even in my opening statement. I was like, hey, the burden of proof is ultimately that you need to show that it's either internally incoherent or contradictory, which he did not do, or provide a more coherent alternative explanation, which he did not do. And it was not historically grounded, consistent with the witness. He was making these sweeping, baseless claims, just saying, transubstantiation was completely rejected by the entire early church, which is frankly false and nowhere attested. He would say, no, all these random things that he would just say. So none of it was proven. He didn't meet that burden. And then his burden, if you recall, was like, hey, you got to meet these 5 things, right? And he didn't accept them. But internally, if we
what was the 5 things again?
He said that you must prove that the bread does not remain, right? You must prove substantially You must prove that there were like 4 others that he brought up, but all of them are ultimately proven within the entire explanation of transubstantiation. He just was refusing to accept it because he was coming with this overt literalist hermeneutic, like you mentioned. That this was the main thing, was that he was taking a very literal stance on the hermeneutics when he was reading these scriptures. And then also material empiricism, right? Almost to the point of scientism, which, again, it's like, well, if I can't see this in a microscope, if I can't see the atoms change, then there's not a change at all. But if we're talking about a miracle that affects the imperceptible and it's changed mystically, there cannot be what do you call it? There cannot be a empirical proof for that. Just like there cannot be an empirical proof for the fact that my dream changed to a nightmare, right? Like I can't show you a picture of that. I can't show you on a ruler of that. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a categorical error, the way he was approaching this, and I think we agree on that. I'm not going to say that.
But for me, I do think that like this is where I feel like he had to justify why scientism matters, right? And so, but for me, right, like. If I were him, I would press that because it's a metaphysical reality, right? There is a problem of epistemology that you can't really exactly prove, right? Except for more, it has probably to do with more of a leap of faith, or like even in a Eucharistic miracle, right? Like, does it actually prove transubstantiation? Right, and if we really can't have that certainty, right, then you get what I'm saying. The transubstantiation is still a doctrine that is in a state of not. You get what I mean? So I think he could have done a better job in terms of empiricism, but in terms of empiricism, right? Like I think he should have got to more. He should have been more clear that like there should be certain type of evidence that we should see. Obviously from scripture and the history of the early church. You get what I'm saying? And also obviously bring a model which makes more sense, right? Like when you mention Chalcedon, I would do the same, right? And like Christology will be very important in this debate, or at least we should establish, right, a mutual agreement that Christology should matter.
Yes.
Right? Now, if it does, then what does it imply, right? And so this is where we really have to get to the nitty-gritty, right? But AAC didn't do that, so it felt very disappointing. But for me, it's like he keeps saying, "Oh, the evidence that you show on, church father calling it flesh, it doesn't mean that it's transubstantiation." I remember he said that a lot. Like, I think I will agree with that, right?
Yeah.
You'll agree that like just using these proof texts, even many church fathers, right? Like it doesn't mean that it absolutely leads to transubstantiation.
No,
all it can show is that it's compatible with it. It is compatible, but obviously, but for me, ASC, I think was engaging a little bit of an argument of silence. Okay, just because they didn't use the Aristotelian term, it doesn't mean that they rejected it.
Right.
That's
and
an
likewise,
just because, and so this is why you have to be very careful here, right? This is why for me, I feel like the way he approached the debate is, church fathers said this, or transubstantiation is false. I felt like, no, you can't do that because you're just assuming it.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to do is probably say that there's a more burden on the Catholic side. So this seems to be more in line with Protestantism than Catholicism, right? Transubstantiation is more under threat. You know what I mean? I feel like that's the way he had to frame it.
Right.
And absolutely outright say it's false. You get what I mean?
No, exactly. And
because he did that, right? That's where the burden shifted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he had a very advantageous position. Okay, if he didn't make positive statements, he would most likely win the debate. No offense to you, okay?
Fine.
But like he made positive statements, which he had to support. right? That's why I felt that he didn't really do well.
Right, and one thing we talked about this earlier.
But there are some good things that he did.
Yeah, he should have leaned into the metaphysics, right? Because we even you don't have to believe in transubstantiation to use metaphysics. We use metaphysics every day. The idea that the sun is going to rise the next day is a metaphysical claim. We're using like this idea of a homeostasis in nature to assume that, hey, the next day sun's going to set, moon's going to rise, sun's going to rise, but we don't actually know with absolute certainty that that's going to happen. So we suspend that. And again, if he had done that, there are metaphysical arguments against transubstantiation. I mean, I would make one. My first thing would have been like, okay, well, we can see that in Aristotelian metaphysics that accidents must adhere into the substance. But what you're saying is that with transubstantiation, that's not the case. The accidents are suspended. They break the natural order. So, I mean, obviously there are arguments against that as well, which we could have dovetailed into that because I tried my best to practice both sides of the argument.
I just feel like that doesn't really exactly disprove the metaphysics, because like even if Aristotle himself, right, would never use the metaphysics in a way that Aquinas did, right, it doesn't mean that the way you guys have used it is absolutely false, right? And so for me, I just feel like as a Protestant, right, the best route is through theology and metaphysics in a different way, where what we should do is try to say what is the best way to truly understand the Eucharist harmoniously, right? And if it's and then put forth the case that Christology and the Incarnation should be at the forefront, and then from that, or which view, right, it have symmetry and asymmetry, and then one side, and I think clearly, no offense, Catholics have a asymmetrous position, right, of the Eucharist in terms of incarnation, right? That there will be the burden to rationally justify why there is a asymmetry there, right? Well, for my view, incarnation, there will be a symmetry, right? So, you get what I'm talking about?
No, can you explain how the Catholic position would be asymmetrical?
Yeah. So, for example, right, the incarnation, right, is that Christ partook a human nature, and his human nature is united with his divine nature.
Correct.
There's two distinct natures there, right? He has two natures and two substances, human and divine, right? With the Eucharist, right, once the bread is consecrated to the flesh of Christ, and that is truly the flesh of Christ, first, what nature is that? What type of flesh? What type of Christ is it really? Is it his human flesh? Is it his glorified flesh? Why is it? Right? First, we should establish that. Then, once we do, then we can say, is there two natures? That's similar to Christ's actual incarnation. Perhaps it's not the same because it's bread, right? But for me, what I would say is like, under the Catholic position, right, the substance of the bread is changed and it's gone, right? It's gone once the bread is consecrated, right? But in the Christ incarnation, the substance of the human nature, or the substance of humanity, is maintained and united. Do you get what I'm saying? So I when I see the incarnation and transubstantiation, there is an asymmetry there.
Well, that's just according to the hypostasis, though. So again, when that happens in transubstantiation, it is the full person of Christ, right? Body, blood, soul, and divinity, and that includes both his human and divine substances. Because even as a hypostatic person, he was defying Aristotelian categories, right? Because again, his human nature had a genus, but his divine nature does not have a genus because God cannot have a genus, right? So he had primary substance, but not secondary substance. Already he was defying Aristotelian metaphysics. So it's not breaking him to say that the fullness of his person, according to Chalcedon, is present in the Eucharist.
But do you see where I'm getting at, though, of how it can be there can be asymmetry?
I can see how it's explainable.
Because
it is
because
explainable.
Clearly, for me, right, the hypostatic union is to try to show the how to try to reconcile the human nature and divine nature by saying that there's a mystical union, right, between the two. And for me, I feel like we could say the same thing between the bread and Jesus, or in the wine and Jesus. There could be some mystical understanding, maybe not exactly the same way as his humanity and divinity, but there's some type of, mysterious union. You get what I mean? There can be some type of mysterious union between the two, right? But for me, transubstantiation has nothing to do with really the union between the bread and Christ. It's really the transformation, right? It's how the bread transforms into the flesh of Christ, right? So there's nothing united, right? There's no unity between the bread and Jesus or the wine and Jesus. It's just transformation. You get what I'm saying? And that's what I mean.
Substance with the full substance of his personhood. Yeah,
and that's why that's where I'm saying there's an asymmetry there, because the Protestant, like in the incarnation, maintained the unity, while the Catholics, no offense, maybe you don't like this language, but they discarded it and decided to go through transformation instead, right? And so, which way is more feasible, transformation, or the unity between bread and wine and Jesus himself? I think that will be the crux of the debate for me.
Right, and we talked about that during the debate, where he's like, why would it not be like the sacramental union of the Lutherans? And I was like, well, we are maintaining the essence of Christ, right? He is impassible, even in his glorified state. He's not going to merge with bread. He is going to maintain his hypostatic personhood, right? That would be the difficulty.
Because for me, like, consubstantiation is to maintain the flesh of Christ too, right?
So they merge it. It becomes merged with the essence of bread. So that when I was Lutheran, that's how we were taught. It's like it's above, below, around, and in the bread and wine. So he becomes part of it. So it's a bread Christ and a wine Christ. It's a merging of those essences, right?
I don't know if it's merging too, because they'll say that you eat both flesh and both Christ. Like sometimes they may say merging, but I feel like sometimes like they won't say that. They just say you just eat both bread and Christ. Just eat both there. And there's a mystery. Deal with it. Like that's what they'll say. The scripture says so, right?
Right. And then this gets kind of into ubiquity and ubiquity according to Chalcedon. Right?
Did he mention that though? Because I think what I'll point out is it depends on the Lutheran.
He didn't mention ubiquity. He did not.
And for me, like consubstantiation really has some caricature, because the above and the below thing that was only mentioned once by Luther. It's never that definition that you have given to me, right?
They still teach that. Yeah. They still teach that. Even when I was Lutheran, that's what our pastor.
So some Lutheran pastors teach this, but it's not really in their confessional statements, right? At all.
So we're talking like Augsburg,
right? And so and many Lutheran theologians, I don't think they like that type of definition. So for me, I know that the hardcore Lutherans would just say that you eat bread and you eat Christ at the same time. Okay, there's a mystery, deal with it. That's the simple position, right? And so for me, I'll be like, well, in regards to this position, how is transubstantiation more likely to be true?
Because it maintains the unadulterated personhood of Christ, right? It's not sullying him with the essence of a created thing, right? And he brought this up too, because he was like, oh, well, like the hypostatic union. I was like, no, because that's the whole person of Christ still. He's fully God and fully man. He's the theanthropos. So him being present as the full hypostasis is not collapsing his two substances, right?
I do think that it's okay. Even if it's asymmetrous, even if there's an asymmetry, it doesn't logically collapse itself. I think what you say is true. But for me, what I would say is that what's more feasible, since Christ united his human nature with his divine nature, isn't it more? Couldn't it be more plausible to assume that he will unite the bread unto himself in some mysterious way?
So
rather than transforming it.
So I think when we look at feasibility and plausibility, we also need to look at the fullness of God as He's revealed Himself to us, right? And so what the question really becomes, if we look at it from the top level, is like, okay, well, would Christ merge Himself with created substance, right? Other than the hypostatic union, which again, His body is created, right? It was created.
His human nature,
but He's not a created. He's not a created being. But his human nature his humanity and human side was created for this purpose of this incarnation.
Do you think his human nature was merged with his divine nature?
No, I don't. I'm not saying it was merged, but I'm saying that as part of the incarnation, he was flesh, right? I mean, because otherwise, we would be delving into like this purely spiritual or docetic view of the incarnation, which
but for me, if there's no merging between the human nature and divine nature, then we don't have to say that there is some form of merging between the bread and wine and Jesus, right? We can just say that there's a mystical union between the two.
But we would need a basis for that, right? Like, and that's why I was hearing the Vincentian canon so much. Like, we would need to see like some sort of continuity that would backstop this belief that there was a sharing within the bread. And like I said, I have not seen that. I've seen multitude.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, so we both agree, with the two of us at the very least, that when it's consecrated, it's the flesh of Jesus, right?
Yes, and that's what we.
Yeah. Okay. So what does the flesh of Jesus? What nature and substance does it have once it's consecrated?
It has the nature and substance of Christ, right? And the accidents remain if we're talking Aristotelian views. The appearances will always be bread and wine.
But isn't that the
accidental qualities will be there.
What substance? Human or divine substance?
It's going to be both human and divine, because that's part of his personhood. Remember, it's according to his personhood, the whole hypostatic person. So it's not collapsing them. It's still they still remain separate, right? And that's exactly what it is in his natures. He has two natures, and they don't commingle, and we're not like communicating properties, or the communicatio.
So both his human nature and divine nature is present within the Eucharist?
Yes, because it's the fullness of his person and the sacramental mode. That's the Catholic teaching.
I don't know if the Catholic teaching says that there's divine nature also in the Eucharist.
Well, it's his body, blood, soul, and divinity, so it would naturally have to be. Mm-hmm. And that's why, according to Chalcedonian Christianity, you can't separate he can't be diced up according to each. He can't like appear purely spiritually like that, or it's the wholeness of his person. Now, to whether or not it's a biological or a sacramental mode, that's totally different, right? And that's why he doesn't appear in flesh, in like biological flesh, in the Eucharist, right? Except during Eucharistic miracles, which during that debate I deliberately left off the table to avoid muddying the waters, and I knew that he would like latch on to everything.
Can we muddy the waters? Because I asked you, right?
No, you didn't. You don't. No, I'm not saying you muddied the waters, but I
did. When I asked you the question, yeah.
Well, if the bread remains bread and Christ is also truly present, what prevents that from looking more like a union of two substances than the Catholic perspective that you're trying to argue for?
Well, the Catholic position doesn't say that there is a union, because there is no substance of bread. It changed.
Well, that's correct. It's not a union. It's not a union of substances with the bread and the wine.
Well, that would be more, because that's implying more of a mixture rather than a union, because the two substances there.
But for me, when you say mixture, right, we will never call the unity between human nature and divine nature a mixture.
Well, because it's not. There's separation there. Yeah, it's not.
It's because you're.
I don't know if
two realities into a new thing. That's why
we can never say that there is a separation.
So
between the human nature and divine, right? There's a distinction, right? But we can never say Chalcedon is clear. It's not separated. They never taught this.
Well, they're united within the person, but they are distinct. That's what I meant by
separation. Yeah. But they'll never use the word distinct. They'll never use the word separated.
So my question becomes, say if we in theory, right, June, like just for the sake of argument, we say, hey, this is possible. What would be the container for the substance of bread, right? Would the bread become the container for the personhood of Christ, and then that's the hypostat? That's like a different hypostatic triunity.
I don't know. Do you think the human nature will be the container for his divinity?
So if
again, like you get what I'm saying, like you never ever apply to
personhood.
this to Jesus, but you're trying to use this, right? The thing that you never apply to Jesus, to the Eucharist, which is through his flesh.
It's the hypostatic union. His personhood is what holds us together. So would this just be an adoption of the substance of bread into his personhood?
Wait, you always tell me that the intransubstantiation, his personhood, holds the bread altogether.
Because
he doesn't, right? He doesn't hold anything.
The substance is wholly replaced, and
he holds the accidents. He holds the physical properties of the bread together, right? But the substance is gone, right? So maybe I can grant you the physical properties, but he doesn't hold the substance.
He replaces the substance, and that holds the thing together because the accidents are suspended because of his power to create ex nihilo. They don't adhere to him. That's what I'm trying to say. So do you, in the sacramental union, does the substance and accidents of bread adhere to Christ? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, before we kind of delve more, what is your stance on the real presence? Is it like a consubstantiation view, or
no? It is incarnation.
So it's like a actual like depiction of the incarnation. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, impanation.
No, it's not the actual,
imparnation. It's
impanation, becoming bread.
Impanation. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So he becomes bread. Like incarnation becomes flesh. Impanation, like pan in Spanish, or I think they still say pan in like Japan too, from the time with the Padres. So yeah, he becomes bread. He becomes the bread. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I have to think on that. Give me some time to ruminate while you guys discuss.
Yeah.
No, so what I'm trying to say is that in transubstantiation, the substance is replaced. It's not annihilated; it's replaced, and then the accidents are suspended mystically because of his power to create ex nihilo. In the sacramental union,
can I just ask you this question?
Sure.
Is there a bread nature within the Eucharist? Is there the nature of the
bread alone prior to transubstantiation, it does have a substance, yes.
No, after
no, it's replaced.
So there is no bread nature and bread substance, right?
So the bread. So if we're talking substance and nature, yes. So the bread itself is only accidentally present. The accidents remain. The other 9 accidental categories. Yes, the physical properties are accidental. So like size, shape, taste, color, all those things remain unchanged. The only thing that changes is the substance, which again is not perceptible by your senses.
And also nature, right?
Well, substance and nature are treated as one and the same in Aristotelian categories because again, substance, primary and secondary substance are genus and scratch that, reverse it. Substance is basically your individuality based on form and matter, prime matter.
Yeah, right.
And then secondary substance is your genus according to whether you're human or animal or whatever you would be. So in this case, the bread would be the substance of bread, right?
But I feel like the substance. I don't know if Aristotle ever said that nature is included within substance. Maybe I'm wrong. And I don't even know if Aquinas, when I read his work, ever associated nature with substance altogether. That's why I'm asking you, okay? Because I wasn't so sure.
I guess now, like thinking on it, it's like so does Christ cease to be what he is in order to become bread in your view?
So just like how Jesus' humanity doesn't cease, right? When he becomes a human, right? His nature is also it remains intact and is united mystically through divinity, right? Bread, right, is mystically united in a similar way. There is no second incarnation, okay, but bread will be mysteriously or mystically united in some way between Jesus himself. Every question that you use, like for me, it's like you guys will never use that on the actual Christology, right? So for me, it's like, why are you trying to apply the standard that you wouldn't use to Jesus?
I'm mainly just trying to figure out more about your view. I'm just trying to dissect it, because if that's what you're saying, if that's what you're saying, then are Christ and the bread identical, or is there any distinction?
Well, there is a distinction, right? Just like
okay.
So remember, try to the same system that you're gonna use, right? For the humanity and the divinity of Jesus Christ. What I'm saying is, let's use that standard and apply to the Eucharist. Okay. So, for example, what were your questions again, or you can give new questions?
I'm still just asking. I have a few more. So if they are distinct, then that means that Christ has not become the bread itself. It just would imply that he's present in the bread, which is kind of
because this is what I'm saying. Like
how?
Just because his nature, his human nature and divine nature is distinct, right? It doesn't mean that his divinity just in his humanity, right? Like, just because they're distinct, they're all together. Do you get what I'm saying? So let's try to use the same logic that you would use to Christ himself. And why do I keep insisting you on this, Alfonso? Is because you guys call the consecrated bread the flesh of Christ.
Yes.
Right? So if it's the flesh of Christ,
well, it's, yeah.
Right, then we should use the same
incarnational
model.
Christi.
Right? We should use the same incarnational model to the Eucharist, right? And we shouldn't try to do something completely the opposite. The questions that you're asking me, right, is implying that we should treat it differently, completely the opposite. That's my point.
Because the reason why is because one's a biological mode and the other one is a sacramental mode. So you can't treat it in the exact same incarnational sense because, again, it's not in carnis, it's not in flesh in that sense. It's still
what happens when there's a Eucharistic miracle?
That's different. That's a different story.
Do you think that we can apply the incarnation model?
But we're talking about transubstantiation. We're not talking about Eucharistic miracles.
That's why I want to muddy the water, right? Because you remember, wait. Alfonso, I asked that very interesting question. I'm really curious. I want to know what you think too.
Yeah,
because like Catholics deny that they're cannibals because they take the physical properties of the bread, right? But in the Eucharistic miracle, the physical properties are no longer there.
Oh,
right?
I answered you on this one.
Yeah. And so, I was asking John if that is cannibalism, and he said that because it's Christ and it's divine flesh. Am I wrong?
Hold on, I'm trying to find my answer.
It's not a regular human flesh. You guys are not engaged in cannibalism, right? And the one thing that I want to explore will be is that when the flesh, when there's Eucharistic miracle, is it the same human nature when he was incarnated, or is it glorified?
So look, if it would not, I'm just gonna read exactly what I read, what I wrote to you, just for the sake of the audience. So the question was initially, if someone eats the Eucharistic miracle, is it possible that person is engaging in cannibalism because the accidents and substance in the Eucharistic miracle's flesh? And I said it would not be considered cannibalism even in that case because Christ is alive and the totus Christus, so the fullness of Christ, is still present, meaning body, blood, soul, and divinity. And the tissue itself, when examined, is also still living. It is reserved for investigation by the church rather than eaten in those cases when the accidents change. But since it's the living second person of the Trinity and not a dead person, it would not fit the definition of cannibalism as written. So even if you did eat it, it would not be considered cannibalistic because he's not dead. He's the second person of the Trinity. He's the Theanthropos, right? So that's kind of the why, right?
Yeah.
But it's set aside and investigated or dissolved.
Yeah.
But for me, John, like when we killed Christ, right, we would say that we killed his humanity, not divinity, right? And so likewise there, right? If we're gonna eat eat that flesh, are you saying that we're eating both his flesh and divinity there?
Yes, because he's still the Theanthropos, even in that portion. It's still you. If I cut off my arm, right? Like my human nature doesn't like bleed out of me, right? Like my human substance doesn't leave me. I'm still John, and I'm still human, and that part of me would still be human. The difference is because he's impassible and we're not cutting pieces off of him, that even in that moment when it's a Eucharistic miracle, it's still the fullness of his personhood, still the fullness of him as the hypostatic union demands.
Then let's say that if he was during Jesus' time when he was incarnated, if we if we cut off his flesh and we eat it, would you say that we're also eating the divine and the human flesh as well?
Yeah, that's the fullness of Christ. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Because for me, I feel like that's more of a Miaphysite model rather than a Diophysite model, and I don't know if that's...
Wait, how so? How so? So are you saying that there would be...
Because for us, we'll say that when we kill Jesus, right, we don't say both his humanity and divinity died, right? Just like anything that engages with the flesh, I think that we're going to create a distinction, right? And so we're going to say that, for example, if we pierce Christ, we pierce his human flesh. We don't say that we pierce his divine flesh. I don't think that we'll say that he has a divine flesh at all. We'll just say that there's only human flesh. And
yes, but he still has two persons, so that would be wounding according to his human nature. But he would not cease to be a divine person. That's the point. He's still fully divine.
Yeah, he's fully divine, but I think that Chalcedon is clear that there is no such thing as divine flesh.
Actually, it's a Rice Krispie.
It's only human flesh, right? Because if we say that there's a human nature, there's human flesh and divine flesh, you get what I mean? Then
I would say that there's an exception with the Theanthropos, that his blood and his flesh are indeed divine, right? Because again, it's fully God and fully man. It's not just you cannot make this separation, right? The natures are distinct, but he as himself is still a divine person.
I'm still like just trying to...
It's an interesting discussion, though.
Yeah,
John, I find it very interesting. Yeah. See, I think this is where we should really debate, right? Christology.
Well, that's where it all stems from. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, most debate, right, is always about the bread. Yeah, but even the memorialist view or the spiritual presence, right? You said the consubstantiation, like, they'll still say that Jesus is present, right?
But only spiritually.
In some type of way, right? So at some point, what we really should discuss is Christology, right?
Sure.
And how do we apply Christology in the Eucharist? This is very, very important. That's the crux of the debate.
Okay.
Right. And the thing is that, like, you can really weed people out by seeing what their Christological model is, which, I mean, you're a Chalcedonian Christian. AAC, and I'm not trying to disparage him, but I'm just going to say that when I was asking him questions during cross-examination, he was making some very anti-Chalcedonian statements, and he agreed to some premises that he should not have agreed to for the sake of argument, right? For instance,
what are the premises?
So remember when I asked him, like, do you believe that Christ's body is locally in heaven? And he was he wasn't giving me an answer because he never thought about this, right? And he's like, oh, for the sake of argument, yes. And I was like, okay, how is that not placing a limitation on his glorified humanity, which again is not substantiated in Scripture? When he was able to bilocate, he was able to, phase through walls and everything. He no longer had those limitations on his glorified body. And he just completely didn't even realize that within my first question, I basically collapsed his Christology because he just showed himself as a non-Chalcedonian.
How exactly? Can you explain?
So if you're saying that Christ's body is locally in heaven, and that means that he cannot, as in his glorified state, be elsewhere, which is against Chalcedonian Christianity, that he is the fullness of his personhood, right? Body, blood, soul, and divinity. Cannot be separated. Cannot be cut up, divided.
I don't know. That's interesting because...
Would you consider him a heretic then?
Would you say that
No.
Christ's human nature can be omnipresent through his divine nature, but Christ's human nature cannot be omnipresent by itself.
So it's funny, we talked about, I actually wrote an article about this, and even with like the Lutheran divines, right? Like the Saxon
Chemnitz defended this, right? Because do you know the crux of the issue between Zwingli and Luther? Because eventually, right, the Eucharist, it really became, the Christology there.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Because,
That's exactly right.
Luther says the flesh is omnipresent, and
yes,
right, as really what? No, it's not, right? So that's what, that's the way how the debate, that's how the controversy arose, right? Now, Chemnitz further clarified what Luther meant to say is that it is omnipresent not by Christ's human nature in itself. It's because of his divinity that his flesh can be omnipresent, right?
Yes, and they called it multipresentia voluntas, multi-presence according to his will, right? So wherever Christ wills himself to be in his human nature, he can be, because there's no limitation on his flesh. Yes. So, and that was my second question, June, is I asked him, like, hey, can a body be can a body be in one place? Like, only be in one place, right? And then he, and I was like, well, is the glorified Christ bound by pre-resurrection physical constraints? And the answer is no, because we can even see in the Bible that was not the case. And according to his will, he can be in multiple places, which is why I didn't reference it during the debate, but I should have. Is the multiplication of loaves can be more aptly referred to as a multi-location of loaves, right? Which you've heard from like Frank Sheed. I mean, it's cute. But yeah. So the point being is that I was trying to get at his, not just his epistemology, but also his Christology, and it wasn't like a big bombastic like gotcha QA or anything for the cross exam. But my point was to show there are holes in this dude's theology. Why would we listen to him and his stance if it's just purely negative? He doesn't have an alternative. He doesn't even understand Christ or Christ as a person.
Well, I don't think that he needs to show an alternative. All he has to do for me is that the alternatives are not defeated, right? Or they can be equal to, transubstantiation. That's all he has to do.
But he didn't, and that was the only unfortunate part for him.
I think I don't think you did prove that all your views are superior. Like, I have more explanatory powers. I don't know if you did that, because again, it's like you're using metaphysical concepts, and I think you just showed the logical consistency.
Yeah,
but you didn't really show that this is actually true. You just showed that the sources that you have is compatible and logically consistent. But to say that other viewpoints lack the explanatory powers, given the light of evidence that we have, I don't think you clearly demonstrated it.
So, question for you guys. When do you guys want to move on to our next discussion, which is apostasy?
I think this is the most.
Let me just answer this one question. And then I mean, Jen, if you're good with it, we can move. I don't mind. I'm good with either. I mean,
I was just curious. I don't mind. It's just like because that's something I'm more like. I'd probably be able to like discuss on, because like when it gets to this stuff, I'm like.
I mean, I would say that in terms.
Wait! Before you go, also, I'm able to be a better fish. The AAC, no?
No, I would say so. And look, here's what I would say. In terms of the truth of this matter, right? Like, is it true or is it not? I would say that he never met the burden, even if we kept it that simplistic, because he did not prove it false, right? I mean, his external.
Well, he said it's false, right? So he has a burden to prove that it is, because saying that something is false is a positive statement.
It is a positive statement, yes.
And so that's where the debate shifted.
Right, but he did not show it. His external critiques didn't land because they weren't on the same category. And
like, he never
made an internal critique.
If he never made that positive claim, then I would say that like the debate would have been tied. But because he made a positive claim, the debate shifted, and he had to prove his position, which he didn't. For me, right? And that was ultimately what costed him.
He accepted my framing without ever breaking out of the frame. That was the other thing that cost him too, is he never broke out, and he did. So his options were either you play into metaphysics, which he didn't do, and that probably I think that he would have been better off if he had actually leaned into metaphysics.
I disagree.
Really?
I'll just say, well, I mean, Christology is tied to metaphysics, I guess, but for me, I'll say Christology is more theological than metaphysics. You get what I mean? Because like we're not trying to understand Christ for the sake of metaphysics. We're trying to understand Christ for the sake of understanding Christ, right? Because we believe He's our God, right? So that's what for me is more theological.
Sure.
Right.
No, okay, I see what you're saying. Yes, but I'm saying that, of course, we're still in the realm of theology, but not leveraging metaphysics and going for an internal critique was a mistake on his part. That's what I'm trying to say. Going purely external and using material empiricism and trying to lean on the science rather than actually going to the theology, I think cost him, and I think he would have been better off if he had actually did an internal critique. And like you said, you could use Christology, but you can't really avoid the metaphysical part of this. So it doesn't make sense to argue like an atheist about it. Like your arguments, I mean, yeah, you already know how I feel about Ichin. So there's a and I don't want to be too rude to the guy, but there's a crevasse between you and him in terms of theological maturity. A crevice, like a big gap between you and him in terms of theological maturity. I'm not here to glaze you, but I'm just saying, like, having debated having debated them both. Yeah, I'm glazing him because having debated them both, I can tell you that one of you has a mature theological system, an actual, full paradigm, and the other one is just, anti-Catholic polemics, right? And we obviously know that that's not you, because you actually think about this and you apply a feasibility principle as opposed to, hey, if it's Catholic, I don't want to be interested in it. You don't just shut down, right? You actually entertain some of this. You actually think it through. So yeah, of course I'm gonna favor you, and I wouldn't put you two in the same. I wouldn't put you guys in the same bleacher, like let alone in the same stadium. So I'm just saying, you're at a different level than he is, Jim, and that's a good thing.
Different than most Catholics that I talk to, so that's also a plus.
Yeah, hey, there you go. I mean, I'll take it. But no, like my point is this: is like I can have this conversation with you without you like blowing up and bringing up random proof texts for crap, and we can actually talk about like the Christological implications of some of these things, and have something fruitful, right? Whereas with him, it just became like he brought up the Levitical blood laws and said that Christ was breaking his own rules at the Passover by and the fruit of the vine. Yeah, that's right. He brought it. Did you see that part?
The fruit of the vine.
The fruit of the vine. Which, by the way, that would have happened prior to the consecration. One thing I messed up there, June, is I didn't bring up esthio in John 6. And like I said, to be clear, John 6 is not like the gimme, like once and for all 100% proof of transubstantiation, right? Or even the real presence. Like, yes, you can use it for that. It's part of it. It's a text that shows that, but really it's the holistic whole and then the lived tradition of the church that's going to show it. If I just brought you John 6, that's one component of an entire argument, not the whole thing.
It's just a concept, right? That's all you're doing.
It proves the concept, but it doesn't. But it's not by itself. Like
it can demonstrate the concept. I don't think they proves it. It can demonstrate that there is a possible concept there. Right?
Well, but you need to take it with like the other parts of the Bible that would lean towards this, and it can't be taken in isolation, right? And even like the Greek linguistic part of it, you have to look at the rest of what Paul was writing and how it's like what Peter wrote about particularly the divine nature, John's and the Johannine use of abiding. It can't just be one like chapter.
But for me, what I think what I would do in the debate would be to show the mutual agreements that we would agree, right? In our debate, right? Like I think I should have stated our mutual agreements more clearly, but I did show that the Holy Spirit can guide any church, right?
Yeah. Well, the Holy Spirit can guide anyone he pleases.
Holy Church. Yeah. Well, we know we don't limit the Holy Spirit within one single church. We don't do that, right? And then we also do not deny that the church have genuine authority, right?
Yeah.
They do have authority to teach. You shouldn't just become a self-proclaimed pastor, right? And say, "Oh, I'm Billy Bob. I'm not the pastor, Billy Bob."
I mean, like that. Though, right? Quick way to make some money. Go fund my own IFB Independent Fundamental Baptist Church on my my street corner. Why not? But no, I know what you're saying. Yes, because you're
we both agree on that, right?
To be clear for everyone, Jun is a magisterial Protestant, which means he does believe in church authority. He's not a, you're not like an evangelical or anything. You are a magisterial, and so that means a high church Protestant.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, like I think when we debate, we really should focus on the positives a lot first, right? Because because there are a lot of positives that we can look forward to with one another, and
he's Presbyterian.
That should be the one to be used to remember that we're not like vicious enemies.
No,
right?
No, we're brothers in Christ.
We're brothers in Christ, but we're divided because of sin, right? And all we're trying to do is really trying to find the truth, right? And that pleases our Lord, right? And so this is why, like, offering mutual agreements and giving proposals how to solve the dispute, I think matters more, right?
Well, that's a dialectical approach, which is you and I were engaging in dialectics during our debate with Sola Scriptura. What was not happening during this debate was it was an heuristic approach, meaning he just wanted to win at all costs, which is why if you saw his cross-exam, you saw his closing, you saw his questioning, it was all just, I'm not going to say bad faith, right? Because I think he genuinely believes in this.
Yeah, I think so too. There's no way you can say he's deceptive. No way.
No. He is 100% putting out what he believes. But
he's not trying to be mean either. You get what I mean? He's not trying to be mean on purpose.
But I think he genuinely... It's polemic.
Yeah, it's polemical.
It's an attack.
Of course
it
is.
Right.
But he wants to be gracious, right? Like he wants.
I think he tried. Toward the end, we were good, and after,
right?
and afterwards, we were okay. So yeah, I'm not. I will say, I was a little peeved when he did like his victory lap on his channel. But that's a whole another story, because that's another thing that you have an edge on too, is humility, right? I think like. You were humble enough to be like, hey, I could have done better. Likewise, we hashed it out. I know that I'm not like some. I have a lot of areas to improve in, a lot to learn still, even on both debates. So, but having the humility to self-critique is something that I really admire in you, Jun. I've been trying to copy that too. Is to be more aware of like, hey, our failings, right? We're not gonna like, say everything right. Or do everything
fair enough. Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, no.
So we'll move on. This is a topic that we really have to.
Right?
Yeah,
this is the biggest one, right? This is the devastating topic.
Yeah. So I guess just to start with, like, kind of explain, because since you're Presbyterian, you would hold to the Westminster Confession, right? Yeah. So I guess in that sense, like, kind of explain the preservation of the saints to our audience. And then I just want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind.
What do you mean the preservation of the saints?
Just like your understanding of it.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the preservation of the perseverance of the saints.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and how that can tie up to the apostasy, right? Because we believe in once saved, always saved, right? When God chooses someone to save, He will not fail, right? Now, it doesn't mean that if somebody genuinely believed at some point of time and walked away and never repented of his apostasy, it means that he was never a true Christian to begin with. He probably had genuine faith, right? But what we will say is that he never was gifted with the irresistible grace or efficacious grace in the Thomistic term to persevere all the way. So the gift of perseverance is a given. So this is what we'll say. Now, when we tie, so if we use this consistently, was there the gift of perseverance in the first century and onwards? Obviously, yes. Then logically, it means that the church can, all the people in the whole world at some point in time and for considerable time, can never all become apostates. It can't be, right? And so because of that, right, it will logically lead to the denial that the church would, at any age, would ever become an apostate.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I guess in your understanding, what is it about this efficacious grace then that makes it that makes rejection of God impossible for an individual?
Oh, dude, this is gonna be fun. We're getting into like real Thomism now. This is
well, if you look at the Catholic encyclopedia, efficacious grace is where he pre-moves the will to. Give me a second.
You're
I don't
correct.
want to get.
He pre-moves the will, and he will make events in the causal chain so that you will choose this, even leveraging your own free will. You'll still be a secondary causal agent capable of free will and free choice, but God will allow circumstances and everything to. It's not coercive, mind you, but He will also soften your will enough to go and do, make this choice. It still is your choice, but He is hedging the bets, basically, if you want to look at it like that way. And that's maybe not the best way to explain it, but yeah, he makes sure that you're going to make that choice without forcing you.
So
okay, go on.
So I personally find an issue with that, and I'm not gonna make the straw man claim you don't believe in free will. Obviously, you believe there is a free active agent of choice. My understanding, however, the issue I have is that if that were the case, then there was no actual truest expression of free will, at least in the truest sense of what the free will is. Also, because it's like
I do think that we're straying away from the topic, right? Like, you get what I mean? Like, I don't want to. We could discuss predestination and free will some other time, or maybe even have a debate between me and John about that. Right, between the Augustinian tradition, if you want to, right?
Judd, I don't think we're like actually, if we're talking like Thomistic, like predestination and Thomistic free choice and free will, I don't think we're actually in disagreement like all that much, to be honest with you. Maybe that's like controversial take, but because what I just described was how efficacious grace works according to the Thomistic framework, which is not that different from Calvin's view. The only difference in Calvin's view is that it is coercive to the will, though. That is the only thing I see as the real delta between.
But I don't know. I don't know, because when we see the auxiliary controversy between the Thomists and the oneness.
Well, what I'm mainly just trying to get at is, if someone does receive efficacious grace, can they still ultimately reject God?
No. If you receive efficacious grace, you're part of the elect. So you have sufficient grace to make choices, to have reason and faculties of will, but that efficacious grace, well, one, we cannot earn it. We cannot be predestined to it. We cannot we are not made with that. Predestination happens outside of, we cannot do anything to earn that or coerce God into giving us that. He gives that upon His own will and His own choice. We can make ourselves more predisposed to receive it, right, by obeying Him, by cooperating with the sufficient grace, but we cannot like bend God's arm and be like, hey, you know what I mean, or like through
we can never receive efficacious grace on our own. We can never create efficacious grace.
Well, we can agree that we can agree at the sense it's like when the causal agent of salvation is through God's grace, but the point I'm just trying to get at is that
that's pretty cool.
It's like I'm a huge proponent of the free agency of humanity, in the sense where it's like, even
you don't lose it. You in the Thomistic sense, you still retain that. You're still a free agent.
I'm not fully on the Thomistic sense. It's like, Thomistic metaphysics is a huge proponent of the Catholic faith, but it's not dogma. Not everyone has to believe everything. The
Thomistic is the most popular position in the church right now.
It is a very popular one.
The Molinistic view is dying. There's no.
I would hold more to a Scotistic view. I would hold more to a Scotist view.
Oh, Scotism.
Oh, interesting, Scotism.
Yeah, I
Like
know.
I know that modalistic position is dying. Like even the modern day so-called Molinist, they do not believe the same thing as Molina does, right? So there's that.
That's true.
Robert Bellarmine started to pioneer more, right? With Molinism, but still even that remodeling or like that reform model, it's not really like popular at all either. And so like Thomistic position is still like I think the most mainstream, even within the so-called modernists as well. Even like you look at like William Lane Craig, right? You look at other like Protestant modernists, right? Like they don't hold to a position like Molina or Bellarmine
That's true.
or
That's
Suarez.
also true. Well, Lutherans themselves don't hold to strict Lutheran like theology, right? Like they'll hold the name. Likewise, a lot of like Reform don't hold to the fullness of Calvin's theology, right? A lot of low church Presbyterians are far afield, right? Um, and that's part of it because they
But I
hold the
want to
name.
mention to you
Yeah.
about coerciveness, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the free agency, is that I feel like there's a point where like in the auxiliary controversy where Richard Baxter, right? Yeah, Richard Baxter.
No, the name sounds familiar though.
Yeah. In the dispute between the Thomas and the Molinist, right? He's a reform, right?
Yeah.
He pointed out his disagreement, like so when God pre-moves the will, I do think that he points out that it can be some type of like maybe you do say it's coercive, but what we will say is that there needs to be some type of persuasiveness. There's some kind of effort that God needs to do to convince someone because of the existence of the free will, right? So I do think that there are certain things where like we decide with the Molinists, because Molinists will say that God can use his omniscience to persuade someone to use their free will to worship him, right? And so
Right,
this is something that we did affirm, right? Now I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that Thomas would ever say that there is that type of process. I don't think
they
in
actually do.
the time I think they disagreed.
At the time it was different, but yes, so he does again, even like the terms sufficient and efficacious grace are post Thomas terms. They're not in the Summa. So that's you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
So yeah, I mean of course the theology
with like
developed. Yeah, the theology
Banus and
developed.
everything when they start to really dispute, right? And there's two groups emerging even then, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
But
but for me, if you're talking about that type of course, sure, I can affirm that. But like, we don't say that God decides to say, "Oh, if you don't worship me, I'm gonna kill your family and children," or like I'm gonna put the
no,
screen.
no. It's
like
always positive.
I gotta put the USB chip, and there you go. You're in my control now, and it's fine. Or you get what I mean? Like, we don't do that, right? Like what we'll say is that
No. So I mean, the best way that I would look at it from a Thomistic sense is that like hedging the bets. If I wanted to be romantic with my wife, for instance, I want her to follow me to follow a certain path. I'll put rose petals right on the floor, right in my house. I'll have like candles, maybe leading to I don't know the room to watch some Netflix or something. You know what I'm saying? The point is like that is not like a coercive thing. I'm not forcing her like, hey, follow this, right? But she's like, hey, this is romantic. This is tantalizing. I think that's kind of that persuasiveness you're talking about. That's something that we agree with, but I will say
there
that
is a secondary means, right?
Now
so
I have a question because I do like the gun
well, wait. I would
analogy.
say one thing. Though is that we always have to, and this is across the board, right? Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, whatever. We have to maintain the sovereignty of God's will, but also the ability for us as image bearers of God to have our own reason and will. That's
also,
kind of the tension.
We do have to affirm initial justification.
Yes. Okay. Initial justification as opposed to sanctification or further justification.
We don't earn justification. It's given freely.
Not at all. Yeah, it's a
gift.
Merit.
It's a merited gift, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's something that we all have to affirm, whether we like it or not, right?
Yeah.
We can talk about whether how we maintain and treat the unmerited gift matters, to what degree it matters, right? But like at some point, we all do affirm initial justification, right?
Yes. We agreed absolutely.
So it's like so kind of on the gun thing that June was talking about, because that is an analogy I've always heard a lot. I can agree that with the gun to the head, it does limit, it does remove a level of freedom, but this is under coercion. If we're assuming that the prototypical Christian in good standing with God's graces is not under that coercion, the threat of hell, he's in the good standing. Can he self-determine? And that's where I'm trying to put it at, the self-determination. Can he still, in this sense, have the opportunity to reject it? So the gun in the head is kind of not going to be present in this sense. It's like, because if the gun's there, obviously freedom's limited. But if we remove that threat factor,
but the reality is that freedom is always limited. Right? That we didn't choose we didn't choose our parents. We didn't choose our name most of the time when we were born. We didn't choose where we will be born. Right? We didn't choose sometimes the people that we meet. We just do. Right? So no matter what, right, there is no maximum free will. Right? That doesn't exist. There's no complete free will or whatever. There's none of that, right? But there are free will. There are secondary acts, right? There are secondary causes,
which
where
even, the Westminster
which we all have in control, right? And God does not eliminate the secondary causes and secondary agents. He doesn't, right? But for me, what I think is important when we discuss about all these things is, like, free will is important, right? Like, even under my framework, I can say that there's someone that genuinely believes but can walk away, right? But what I will say is that he was never the elect. He never received the gift of perseverance, right? Like, even within the Calvinist model, I think we could use sufficient grace. If somebody could cooperate with sufficient grace, they can have temporary faith. But that's all they will have.
Yes,
that's correct.
But then I have the question, because then it's like because I can agree, reality is limited. It's like I can't just flap my arms like I'm doing right now and fly away like a bird. I need to be free, I can't make a square and circle, and I can't become God. Freedom does not mean unlimited options. What I'm trying to pinpoint it at is that it's like where we're trying to come down is like, are the limits of freedom coming from my nature as a creature, or are they coming from the determination that fixes one's moral outcome?
I would say it's both. Honestly, it's because the circumstances that lead to your birth are out of your control and have already been written. I mean, right? Even in the Bible, it says, I knew you before you were born. I knew you in the womb, right? I mean, like that. And that's part of his omniscience. I would say this though. I would caution that omniscience doesn't mean omnicausation, right? That's why, like, the causal chain as the first cause, he can still come and interject, but we are still secondary causal agents that can do things and interact with the causal chain.
But still, God can be a primary agent in all things without.
No, not all things. Yeah, no. Yeah, I would agree. No, I think we like, he's the primary mover. That's what I'm saying. He's the primary causal agent in that he started everything and has overall control.
Also say including evil, because many times will say that he's also the primary mover.
And it's like, I'm not
with
trying
evil
to
as well, but they'll create a distinction between the pre-move. So when they talk about evil, right, and when he moves the necessary act and all of these things, right, there are certain type of distinctions that they're made. So God pre-moved the will to cause evil by allowing the person to do an evil deed, right? Instead of preventing it. I do think that that is. Give me a second.
God, that would be contrary to his omnibenevolence. God cannot be the author of moral evil, and evil itself is a privation of good. So, if that is Thomistic teaching, which again I have not heard this one before you, I would say that that's not something taught by the church. And again, not to like fall back on this, but the reality is that not every saints in themselves are not infallible in their personal theologies. and they got things wrong. And
but even if you look at the catechism, it can be interpreted in such a way where there is the free will, right? But I don't remember. I'm gonna bring this some quotes later, but yeah. Do you just want to move to the age of apostasy? Because
the age of apostasy. Can I go through some comments real quick?
And then I wanted to kind of ask you a follow-up question to at least the both answer after we do the comments, and then we can move on to the age of apostasy. If that's okay.
Yo, dude, you came. So I just want to be clear. I want to do this with everybody on the live stream because it's a funny thing. So the Baptist Defender 1611 is a guy who has the Contra Catholicism Discord server, which actually is owned by a pedophile. I think he got removed as owner though. But yeah, he was diddling children, and that's not a joke. That's just what it was. He was on my server, and he's been on several other Catholic servers. He's been banned on multiple Catholic servers, but on my Discord server, I allowed him to stay. And we were talking about the intercession of the saints, which is another fun topic, which I was, he told me it all started from a meme that actually Acolyte Insight posted. And in the meme, it said that, angels don't pray. And then it shows them saying, holy, 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 Lord God of hosts, right? And he said that's angels can't pray according to their nature. And I challenged him on that because I was like, okay, praise is a form of prayer. So you don't understand what prayer is. 2, nature does not preclude you from praying, right? If you're viewing prayer as purely petition, you're already in error. And so we went back and forth, and I was like, okay, let's have a formal debate on intercession of the saints, because this kind of relates to this. He agreed. I did the thumbnail. I had the time scheduled, everything, and we were all set. And then out of nowhere, he just blocks me on Discord, right? With Catholic Defender on the chat, leaves the chat, leaves my server, and then just disappears. But then he still comes here on my live streams and gives me viewership, which I'm fine with. But I'm just saying, like, dude, like, I don't know why you did that. We would have just had a clean, fine debate. It wasn't going to be a big deal, but I'm not going to ban you on my YouTube because I love your views, and tension gives viewership. But yeah, dude, just do better, man. That's not cool.
Wait, can I just go back? Give me a second. Can I go to washroom? Sorry.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm going to keep answering comments in the meantime.
Okay.
You can eat a Eucharistic miracle. It is not advised to do that though.
Yeah.
Usually you're supposed to submit that to the church for investigation. You got some skeeters, dude?
No. I'm trying to prevent the gnats from flying into my throat again.
Gnats. What if I even dissolve? Yep, you're right. Always chips. No, dude, that was a Rice Krispie treat.
It was. And I called her out on
here, bro. You guys need to subscribe to Zealot's Den. This guy has some really good content. He's been on my channel before. He's going to be on my channel again in the future whenever he wishes. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, David's awesome. And then Rex, I don't know if you're still here, Rex, but we love you. It's good to see you.
And Zealots, it is a crucifix.
It is with a Benedictine medal to fight demons.
And I always got to have it.
So we got 2 Davids. Medal. We got 2 Davids, the David and Zealot Den David. So there's, David Romero and David Zealot, I guess, or whatever you guys would like to be called. I'm just going to keep going through. The guy is the Charlie Zelenoff of apologetics. I have 291 and 1 loss, just like Charlie Z. Dude, there was a phase that I wanted to actually like find Charlie Z and box him because he's not like too far from me. Remember that, babe? Yeah, I wanted to hunt him down. I was making meme videos on my old YouTube channel that's gone and doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, Charlie Zelenoff, dude, that guy, if he's not in the hospital right now from a fight, I'd be shocked. My fruit of the vine. Oh yeah. And then Bob the independent fundamentalist Baptist. Nah, dude, come on, I love that guy. What church? Yeah, so he's Presbyterian. I think we already mentioned that. Talking about the Wookiees. Yeah, dude. You know what? One of my favorite things I ever did. I don't know if I told you this, Acolyte Insight, but I went to the Star Wars land in Disneyland with my kids and my wife, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna role play. So we're all First Order contractors that are now working for the First Order after our family and friends at the Death Star were destroyed because all those innocent contractors that were just doing their job got killed.
Okay. I know, especially the second Death Star.
Yeah, I know, dude. That's just a terrorist attack, really. And straight so anyway,
for the Empire.
Anyway, for the Empire. Yeah. So, but yeah, they didn't know how to interact with that. The guy was just like, "Oh no." Why are you working for the Empire?
No!
Oh, no.
But yeah, Zealots,
that's
I did
heavy.
get called like
And I was
Michael.
like, yeah, dude,
Michael
we
Cera
get
a
paid
lot.
by the dude. Look, Kylo Ren pays our bills. I'm able to afford our dwelling with that and the blue milk. All the blue milk my child can drink. And he was just like, oh well, you should do better. That was it. Yeah, I'm being judged by my my loyalty to the Empire.
So can I?
By the way, can I say one thing about the evil thing, the sin? So I got it from this quote. Here. So,
bless you. Woo.
Thank you.
Okay. So here, well, God, respecting the nature of things, move necessary agents to necessary, and free agents to free activity, including sin. Except that God is the originator only of his physical entity, not of his formal malice. In as much as the divine influence precedes all acts of the creature, not in the order of time, but in that of causality, the motion emanating from God is seconded by free intelligent agents takes on the character of a physical pre-motion of the free acts, which may also be called a physical predetermination, because the predetermination of the will is accomplished only by the virtue of divine predetermination.
Yeah. So, Hammer, am I good to ask that follow-up question when you said both? Because I just kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. I always get.
Did you want to address the quote at hand first?
If someone doesn't get irresistible grace and they think they receive
no,
consolation...
wait, hold on. No, what Jin just said.
No, I ADHD moment. I'm thinking about the question.
It?
Yeah, please type it if you could.
Can you post it in that? You can post it in the side chat.
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, you did. Oh, you did. Okay. Yep. Wait, why is this 2 minutes ahead of my time? Okay. And this came from where? The Summa?
Catholic Encyclopedia.
Oh, Catholic Encyclopedia. Is this? Yeah. But is this like
Controversies on Grace?
Is this a controversy on Grace?
No, this is written by scholars.
Okay.
There are certain things that they didn't explain well enough, but yeah.
Thomism. Okay. Let me see. Okay, yeah. Gave expression, causa prima, and the prime mover. Every movement of the thoroughly contingent secondary causes or creatures must emanate from the first cause, and that the application of their potentiality to act. Let me see. But in that causality, the motion emanating from God and seconded by free intelligent agents takes on the character of a physical pre-motion of the free acts, which may be called a physical predetermination, because the free determination of will is accomplished only by virtue of the predetermination. In this predetermination can be found the medium of the divine knowledge, and by God's omniscience foresees infallibility of the future events, whether absolute or conditional, of intelligent creatures, which explains away at once undemonstrable and imaginary scientia media of the Molinists. For just as certainly as God in his predetermined decrees knows his own will, so certainly does he know all the necessarily included determination of the free will of creatures, but they of absolute or conditional futurity. Now, if we carry these philosophical principles from the domain of the natural to the supernatural, then efficacious grace, which is gratia efficax, must be regarded as a physical promotion of the supernaturally equipped to the performance of a good act. For revelation undeniably refers back to grace, not only the possibility, but also the willing and the actual performance of a good act. But the will predetermined to this free good act must with a metaphysical certainty correspond with grace. For it would be a contradiction to assert that the consensus brought about by efficacious grace can be at the same time dissensus. This historical necessity, necessitas consequentiae, involved in every act of freedom and distinguishable from the compelling necessity, which is necessitas consequentis, does not destroy the freedom of the act. For although it can be true of a man who is sitting freely cannot be the same as standing, sensus compositus, which is that's composition, yeah. So what you're doing, or what your position is. Nevertheless, his freedom in sitting is maintained by the fact that he might be standing instead of sitting, which is sensus divisius. So it remains true that the grace is not efficacious because free will consents, But conversely, that free will consents because grace efficaciously pre-moves it to willing and performance of a good act. Here, gratia efficax is intrinsically and by nature, ab intrinsico, se per se, efficacious and consequently intrinsically and extrinsically different from sufficient grace, which is gratia sufficiens, which imparts only the posse, not the agere. To make merely sufficient grace efficacious, a new supplementary grace must needs be supplied. How then is such grace really sufficient? Gratia vere sufficiens. To this, most of Thomists will reply, if the free will does not resist the grace offered, God would not hesitate to supply this efficacious grace, so that the failure of grace is to be referred to as a sinful resistance of the free will. Okay. I mean, I kind of get that. I'm just trying to figure out. So
mainly with the quote he was saying, I now I got a chance to read over. It's like,
well, wait, sorry. Give me a second. What I have to pause here is that there can be a misunderstanding that God will give irresistible grace based on the cooperation of sufficient grace. But like, this is not the Thomistic view. That's the Molinist view. Like, at the end of the day, like, God doesn't need. God doesn't need. You don't need to cooperate with sufficient grace so that God gives you some efficacious grace. He can just give you efficacious grace if he wants. It's not conditional upon your merit. Efficacious grace is truly unmerited, right? And so remember that, right? But people may see this as like, oh, look, you have to cooperate, and then God will help you. No, it's not like that.
No,
I hope people
no, not at all. And we don't think that efficacious grace is unmerited. That's what I think I mentioned that earlier, that we can do nothing to coerce God or to press God or to convince God to give us efficacious grace.
Yeah.
I posted another paragraph of this because I think this is important to point out, is that moreover, a third great difficulty lies in the fact that sin as an act demands that the predetermining activity of the first mover, so that God would, according to this system, appear to be the originator of sinful acts. The Thomistic distinction between the entity of sin and its malice offers no solution of the difficulty, for since the divine influence itself, which pre-moves ad unum, both introduces physically the sin as an act and entity, and also, by the simultaneous withholding of the opposite premonition to a good act, makes the sin itself an inescapable fatality. It is not easy to explain why sin cannot be traced back to God as the originator. Furthermore, most sinners commit these misdeeds not with a regard to their depravity, but for the sake of physical entity of the acts, so that ethics must, together with the wickedness, condemn the physical entity of sin. Now, the Molinists deny that the objection affects their own system, but they postulate the concursus of God as in the sinful act and help themselves out of the dilemma by drawing the distinction between the entity and malice of sin. They say the divine cooperation is the concursus simultaneus, which employs the cooperating arm of God. Only the will in its free determination has decided upon the commission of the sinful act, whereas the Thomistic cooperation is essentially a concursus proavius, which is the inevitable physical premonition which predetermines the act regardless of the fact whether the human will can resist or not. From this consideration arises the fourth and last objection to the claim of the Thomists, that they have only apparently found in the physical premonition an infallible medium, by which God knows in advance with absolute certainty all the free acts of his creatures, whether they be good or bad. For as these premonitions, as have been shown above, must in their last analysis be considered the knell of freedom, they cannot well be considered as the means by which God obtains a foreknowledge of the free acts of rational agents. Consequently, the claims and proper place of the scientia media in this system may well be regarded as vindicated. So that's that is strict Thomism right there.
So can I kind of get talk?
Yeah, let's move quickly. No offense, because we should get into the age of apostasy.
I never even got to ask Hammer the question. You just kind of hopped in and just dropped in. You know.
No, that was me. That was my bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what? No, I just gave it the information. That's all I wanted to do. My bad.
Well, it's like even then, so it's just like just even with that understanding, it's like I can wholeheartedly agree. God is the first cause, and that I can also agree that no act exists apart from God sustaining causality. The point I'm trying to get at is within the secondary causality, us making the decision. So it's like, I guess to put in this thing, it's like, let's say it's like there's option A and option B, but God had God had already determined option A is going to happen or was already fixed. So it's I guess another thing. He determined that option B would be impossible to occur. So did I really choose option A, or was this already fixed?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So it's like that's a question I want to ask. Is like because this is where everything I'm asking like really points towards. It's like because that it's like the option B should be there because the we should have that free will to choose either or, at least the possibility of choosing either or. If option A was already determined to be the only possible occurrence, then am I really choosing option A, or was I just fixed to choose option A? What would you say?
I would say you still choose, but one is more enticing than the other, and that's part of what, yeah, and ultimately that's kind of where the divide lies, right? Hold on a sec. I wanted to thank Retro. Thank you, dude. I really appreciate you. You are too good to me, man. That's you helped me meet my goal. 121% of it, by the way, so we can keep the StreamYard going. I appreciate that. Big props, man. Thank you. And then we got the Disciple Mike. Invite me up. You okay? I mean, what do you guys think? You guys want
Who's the Disciple Mike? Is it the Mark Inquisitor?
So he's a dude I actually am in a debate club with. He's really chill. Let me see. All right, Mike, I'll send you an invite. Let me find you.
So then it just comes down to like I'm just trying to think, and it's like I can understand that that's the choice made, but my question is why would I want A? If why would I want it?
Well, the secondary
why would I want A?
Cause is real and it does exist.
Yeah, we can agree that
no matter what happens, that cannot be negated, right? And they shouldn't be ignored, really, right?
Yeah,
like I became a Christian because I chose. At the end of the day, I did choose to believe in God, right? But I do think that God saved me at the same time, right? So there is that dichotomy. It doesn't mean it's a contradiction, right? Now, for me, that is very real, right? We could say that, yes, that's very real. But God is the primary cause of our salvation. Then what does that really mean? And I think that this is something that many.
I think you chose
this topic is very complicated, right? For good reason. There's there's a reason why that there's people to Calvinists, Arminians, Bonus and Thomas, and all kinds of people with different views still keep debating to this day. It's not ended. The conflict isn't, right? But I do think that at some point, if God is truly the ultimate cause of our salvation, what does that mean? If we truly want to suggest that the secondary, so our cooperation is also important. Okay, it's equally important to God's role in our salvation.
I would say that even from the very beginning, God is a respecter of persons, right? He even respected Adam and Eve so much that he allowed them to make the choice that caused the fall.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess if we look at the holistic, knowledge that we have of humanity, both biblically and then also anthropologically, I would say that it does behoove him for that cooperation, which is why obedience is so important. If he could easily just compel the will, then the entirety of Christ's condescension and subordination of the will would be meaningless, because that means that he would have just as a reductio, he would have caused it himself and would just be submitting to himself because he ordained it and demanded it, not because Christ and his humanity subordinated the will by choice, despite the fact that his human nature was in the travails and very much afraid of death. He still offered that will, offered to obey, and which is why in Romans, right, like through one man's disobedience we fell and have been exposed to the sin and evil. Through one man's obedience as the counterbalance, we have been saved, or we can be saved, right? So that's all I would say, is that I think it does please God to allow us to have will and choice. And that's part of bearing the Imago Dei enables that. That's why we're able to reason, while we're able to exercise our will, while we're able to choose, and while we're able to create, right? That's why it says you are gods, right? Little g, gods, and through this partaking of the divine nature, we're able to fully express it, because the word God has multiple reference, right? I mean, humans, angels, demons, the God, right? So that's kind of where I would take it. If we're just talking strictly anthropologically about the Imago Dei, then yes.
Yeah. Because my concern, and once I say this, we can move on. It's like my big concern is that
I don't want to.
If will ceases to be the true source of its acts and becomes merely the means through which is a predetermined outcome is carried out, then that risks breaking that our self-determination to freely choose. Like for your wedding analogy, for example, love is more meaningful because I could still choose to reject my wife, not because I wouldn't reject her because I married her, but the fact that I could is there. So it makes the love even more meaningful. So the fact I choose God it's like, it makes it more meaningful because at any point I could choose to forsake God. So in that possibility that I can forsake God, me continuously choosing to always pick God makes that decision much more meaningful. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, sure. Want to move on to the topic?
Yeah, we can move on now. I've said what I needed to say.
I wanted to get back to Billy's question, though. If someone doesn't get irresistible grace and they think they receive consolations from God, are they just experiencing a psychological issue or just imagining things? I'll take a first crack. I would say that you can still receive consolations without receiving efficacious grace, right? You know, if people receive consolations, people are subject to miracles, right, without necessarily having personal belief or that grace, right? Like you can even see that in the Bible. Did the servant of the centurion have personal firsthand belief or faith? No, it was the faith of the centurion on his behalf, that intercessory faith. So I would say that you can still experience consolations. At the same time, I would say that there are times where like ecstasies can happen, or what do you call it? Visions can happen, but the church's stance is that they want to rule out every single possibility before they say it's supernatural or source from God. Also, content is important. I'll pitch it over to you guys because I'm yapping.
No comment.
No comment. What about you, Riley?
All right. If someone doesn't get irresistible grace and they think they receive consolations from God, are they just experiencing a psychological issue? Or just imagining things? If God...
Oh, it was directed to Jun, but Jun said no comment, Billy.
Yeah. Well, I guess I might just say it's like...
Well, just say, right? Same thing, so... I don't think I need to answer.
Oh, you just agree with me?
No, I agree with you. That's why I don't think I need to answer.
That's why I love this. Jun agrees with me and I agree with him because we love each other. That's why I have Jun on the show. Oh, Jun, look at this. He's joking. Jun, stop abusing your free will like this. He's just teasing. He's just teasing. I wish I had food right now. I want to abuse my free will and eat. Like my wife has popcorn. My wife has popcorn in the corner. She's eating while I'm starved. I'm famished. I'm abusing my free will and staying on the stream so I can talk with my buddies, and I can be eating popcorn and Reese's Pieces instead. I'm not bitter.
Okay, I think I have something. It's like if God's consolations are genuine, then they are genuine invitations to communion with Him. A grace that it's a grace that appears to invite a person to salvation, while withholding any real possibility. That invitation seems difficult to reconcile. So it's like when you bring into that aspect, it makes it very difficult to reconcile the sincerity of the offer and the freedom given to us. But like That's my understanding, at least. That's how I would answer it.
I was thinking consolation in an Ignatian sense, right? Where like consolations and desolations, where you'll see these certain things and experience these feelings, right? Consolation being you're getting closer to God, a desolation being you're desolate, you're alone. So
I would say more as like the actual like invitational grace to be able to get coming into a deeper relation with him, such as the main sacrament of the Eucharist, our Eucharist.
The Eucharist.
Yeah, the Eucharist. Yeah.
No, so Jin, did you want to take this one? This is a good one. Before the fall, did Adam and Eve only have temporary faith? I have my own answer, but I'm gonna let these fellas take it first.
I think they had genuine faith. Well, they did walk away, but I think they repented in the end.
What do you think, Mr. Acolyte?
I would say they would also have a genuine righteousness, this original justice that we have, of friendship with God, and a genuine grace, but they still had the freedom to turn away from God. That's where I'm just kind of, it's like, no, so it's like, no, it's not a temporary faith. They had genuine good standing with God. This was the original justice, the original righteousness Adam and Eve have pre-lapsarian.
You ready for my heresy?
Get the pitchforks. Hold on.
Well, I would say
just give me
Wait, what's up?
Just give me a second. My girlfriend's calling me. She's going to sleepy.
Oh, okay.
She's going to sleep. Okay,
No worries. Okay, I'll just answer the question while he's gone, though. So,
follow up. She said it was directed at June. I already know what the Catholics think already.
No. But here's my answer to this. So, like you said, I'm just gonna augment your question a little bit, your answer. So, yes, they had the human dignity, the original dignity, and of the prelapsarian man, but rather than faith, they had knowledge. Oh, he left. But yeah, they had knowledge of God, right? Just like the angels, right? Mm-hmm. Having full knowledge of God, well, more so than we do. Adam and Eve had more knowledge of God and were more intimately, in a relationship with Him before the order of grace. Now, I would say that knowledge, as we've seen both with the fall of the angels and then also the fall of our forebears, is not the safeguard that we're looking for. It's that it's a relational thing. It's that, like, not just faith, but also that love, and that tends more towards like the idea that this religion, right, this religare, this rebinding that we're part of, is a repair of a broken relationship, right? So that's kind of where I am with that. Did they have faith? I'm not going to deny it. I don't think it was temporary because they conversed with God, but I would say that it was more based on their knowledge and the desire to have more, right? Because there's a part of pride that comes with that. And pride will inspire.
I can kind of see where you're coming from. It's like I can agree that Adam definitely had a more intimate knowledge of God than we possess now, because he actually was face to face. But in that same sense, faith was also present because he did trust and obey God's revealed word until the fall, obviously. But
so Billy brings up a good point. So when I say before the order of grace, I'm talking about before the new covenant, right? When grace becomes accessible to us, when we are able to partake in this economy of grace, right? So before that, there was the law. Before that, there were the sacrifices. These overtures that God was making to us, because even after the fall, immediately after, God, the first sacrifice, and actually Acolyte Insight was the one that taught me this, the first sacrifice was God to man, by killing the animals for them to be clothed. And then afterwards, it was the establishment of the sacrificial order, offering the lambs with Abel. Made a whole video about this on transubstantiation. That was part of the series. But the point being is that before there was grace, there was the sacrifice, there was the law, and it was a gradual revelation throughout the Old Testament from the different covenants, right? Noahic, Abrahamic, Mosaic, all working up to a Davidic, working up all the way to the covenant of Christ, right? And the fulfillment of all the covenants and all their promises vested in this once and for all sacrifice and fulfillment, which again is grace. Which why this is the once and for all sacrifice. There are no more sacrifices that can be made, right? Because this is the once and for all, which is why this grace, and if you're saying like you can work for it and adhere to the 613 mitzvot, right? You are no longer under the law or the order of grace. You're under the law and held according to that standard. So that's kind of what I meant with that. You guys have any augmentation or anything I missed there, or am I just completely crazy?
No, I think you're pretty on point with that. I would agree with you. Yeah. Well, what about you? What about you, June?
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. I guess there's another comment, a question towards June.
Oh, wait, I totally missed it.
It really seems like it's going to, these questions are never going to stop, and we're never going to talk about apostasy. Like,
Veritas, sorry, Veritas, I didn't mean to skip your question. So what qualifies limited atonement if Jesus literally wept for Israel in Luke 19:41? And this is for you, June, specifically. So
they can just add me, and I can. It's up to you. Let's not talk about age of apostasy because, I mean, this is what we want to discuss. No, this is important.
We can still talk about. Well, do you want to answer the question, or do you want to just get?
Because it seems he's going forever, right? Like,
well, we don't have any more after this one.
Yeah, this is the last.
Yeah, this is the
last one, and we'll make this.
No, it's not. Trust me, because I answered. There's more questions. It's got. Look. This has been going on for 49 minutes.
Well, it's part of a live stream. We got to interact with the audience. I'm not just going to ignore them.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we can, like, for me, it's like, if you want to, I can always deal with it some other time, right? I don't have to deal with it right away all the time. And they can just add me and I can answer it privately if I can, or we can do it in some, we can talk about these things in another time, creating a topic solely for predestination. You get what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, okay. I can't compel you to answer the questions. I mean, Veritas, if you want, you can message him.
Well, wait, what was the question again?
Oh, you want? Okay. So I had it right up here. What qualifies limited atonement if Jesus literally wept for Israel in Luke 19:41?
Okay. Yeah, I'll have that in mind.
Okay. So then, let's talk about the apostasy. Billy, we can. I'll pick your question up after we get into it.
Sorry, my bad. I have like rashes everywhere in my body. It gets very itchy, so I can't hold myself. I really have to apply it everywhere.
It's okay.
It sucks.
So since we're coming back to apostasy, which I could kind of agree, like the topic, at least of free will, it was more rhetorical, but I think it was an important discussion because I think that kind of helps understand the basis of where we would stand with when it comes to apostasy. But I guess just like what's your position on apostasy?
Like all Protestants, if they are confessional, have to reject apostasy, age of apostasy. Completely, right? Like every single Catholic Orthodox will all have to adhere to the rejection of age of apostasy, right? This will be one of the strongest arguments, and this is probably one of the main reasons why many Protestants convert, right? Because it feels like there's a contradiction between age of apostasy and the church being fallible.
I don't see it. I think that there still will be an age of apostasy, even as a Catholic.
Yeah, I think it will. I
don't think the church itself will fall, but that doesn't mean that people won't fall from out of the church.
No, when people say age of apostasy, right? It means like.
Oh, you're talking about like the
Catholic Church
becoming corrupt.
Yeah, completely.
So
Catholic Church completely becoming apostate.
So
that's different.
But at that point, that's
heresy.
Well, at that point, that's not even like an age of apostasy. That's more or less just like coming down to it. It's more of a discussion: is the Reformation justified then? rather than anything like apostasy. When I'm hearing apostasy, I'm thinking the individual. Can the individual fall away, not the church?
Oh, no. That what I meant was, can the church fall away
No.
and proclaim, right? Or like, can the church die completely?
Not according. I mean, if we believe in the promises of Christ, right? That the gates of Hades will not triumph over the church, and that He'll be with us till the end of the age. I don't see how it's possible for anyone but individuals within the church to do that. That could even be like bishops. I mean, we've seen heresiarchs have been bishops, right? I mean, it doesn't. I don't think that that's contradictory. I think the age of apostasy, at least my personal conception of it, would be like a widespread falling away from the faith. Which again, that's and the church will still stand, but that doesn't mean that there will be a lot of adherents. But again, it was never about numbers. It never has been. At one point the Arians were ascendant and more numerous than the Trinitarians. So.
Well, for me, right, that the fact is that this is a big problem, right, for Protestants, and most Protestants leave because of this, right? Because if the church can officially declare error, then it can logically lead to apostasy, right? The church being an apostate. The church, you get what I'm saying? Yeah, but the Protestants say that the church will never ever apostatize itself, ever. There will always be a remnant of true, genuine believer, right? And so usually, right, when the Catholic debates a Protestant, what they'll press on, it will be like apostolic continuity, since we do claim some sort of an apostolic continuity, right? That's what we appeal to the church fathers. But then we believe in that the church is fallible. Hi, Mike. Okay, you're a different Mike than the other Mike.
Disciple Mike. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's up, ladies?
Not the Iron Mike.
What's up, nerd?
This is the Steel Mike.
There's too many mics that I know now.
No, but I can see what you're saying, Jin, because the dilemma would be that if this was the case, but again, that verbiage that needs to be proven in the scriptures, that needs to be proven in the tradition. And what the scripture does say is that, hey, from amongst you will come those that are ravenous wolves, right? That will be as sheep. And likewise, that people will go and twist and turn with every turn of doctrine. But it doesn't say that the church will defect. It says actually that the church is the pillar and bulwark of truth. So I guess it depends, right? It depends on how you would view this. But that's why I'm saying, like, the idea of the age of apostasy is not contradictory from the Catholic paradigm, because if we qualify apostasy as being the individual, we're not going to be looking at it as the church itself. Whoa. My cat. Sorry. Hold on.
Yeah, the age of there can be the age of apostasy. I mean, the Bible did show the age of apostasy, right? But the church can never truly be a full-blown apostate at any age, right?
So are you referring to kind of like
I want to mention this because do you know Anon? There's a guy who is becoming Eastern Orthodox, or is already an Eastern Orthodox. He says that that is the biggest reason for that. But for me, I feel like there's a lot of trouble with many Protestants. Sometimes even I have a problem trying to understand how we understand and reject age of apostasy. How we deny that the church can ever be apostate, but at the same time,
what do you mean by church? What do you mean by the church then? I mean, because that's an important thing when we're discussing this now.
So
what is the church?
So basically, the Protestant confessional do affirm that there is a one church that Jesus established, right? And that church, right, whatever they taught and whatever they did, they would teach, right? And so they'll teach, and many teachings, especially if the Holy Spirit aided, will be preserved throughout the ages, right? So we can never truly say that the church can die and that the teachings aided God by the Holy Spirit can ever die. They'll always be preserved and maintained, right? And so there will be a genuine church. Now we do also affirm the branch theory, right? But in terms of the declaring that the church is fallible, so that they can declare and proclaim heresies, right? But at the very same time, the church will never fully die. It could be a bit very complicated for a Protestant to reconcile these differences. While it's probably easy for Catholic or Orthodox to, like, to reconcile them, because they'll say that certain times, right, the church will be in a dark state, but because it was promised by Christ Himself that the gates of Hades will never prevail, right? The church has infallible authority to teach, and they will be guided by the Holy Spirit throughout the ages, so the church will never fall, right? So they'll be more logically coherent in that manner, right? But the Protestant position will be more complicated. You guys know what I'm trying to say? And that's why I feel like it is important to discuss about this. Don't you think it is one of the biggest issue that divides Catholics and Orthodox? And it is a major problem that the Protestants try to address.
Did you want to say anything to Seven Mike to this? Because I want to give you an opportunity to speak.
No, thanks, man.
Okay, I just want to give you the opportunity. So, would you say I'm misrepresenting it if you're saying it's just like the invisible church cannot, but the visible church can be deeply corrupted? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, don't do that.
I guess, yeah.
Don't do that. Don't.
But to say that the invisible church is gonna die,
No.
The invisible church, you know what I mean? I think that's very.
What I'm trying to say is, like, I'm asking you, it's like, would this be fair to say is a more of a steel man that the visible church cannot?
Did the visible Christ die and the invisible Christ live?
No, the invisible church.
I mean, I have a gut
What do you
pain
mean
with
by
this.
invisible church?
Yeah,
and
me
visible?
too.
Because the invisible church will be among the visible church. So not all visible.
Well, yeah.
So there should be one visible church.
We can agree. Yeah.
If there is a one true church, they should never die, right? So this is the Protestant position, right? So we'll never say it's impossible for all
it's not a
visible
widely
churches to die.
accepted Protestant position, but it is a Protestant position, yes.
No, it's a classic one, right? It may not be Protestant is an umbrella term, right? Not denominational, right, or whatever. Anyone can call this a Protestant, so it doesn't matter.
When we have historically used the term invisible church, we're referring to the angels, the saints in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we mean.
Triumphant, yeah.
They're triumphant, and which is all incorporated. Which is when the pious soul dies, he doesn't leave the church, right, when he's in heaven, but he's no longer visible. He's invisible. Mm-hmm. So we make that distinction, at least classically. Yeah. In terms of those who are triumphant. Or you could just say the angelic realm as well. Those are part of the invisible church. But if you try to use that language for the those on earth, it sort of just begs the question, is my grandmother, who's a Jehovah's Witness, is she part of the invisible church just because she has faith in Christ?
No.
And then the question is, well, why not? Well, because of the councils, because of the certain the acts of faith or something like this. Mm-hmm. So she's not. Maybe she sort of is in faith, a true believer, but physically she's not. So it's just really hard to make boundaries.
Do you think that the Jehovah's Witness mom, or is it grandmother, would go to hell forever?
I don't know.
It's not for us to say. I would say this though.
Because logically, it's not part of the true church, and she's not part of the visible church, and there's no such thing as an invisible church. then don't you think that it is
the
logical?
question is just, is she a part of the
her
church?
condemnation?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
I really.
she's not
I
part
really,
of the true church, then, right? So
I really don't like this false dichotomy between visible and invisible. There's just one church. That's like making a distinction between the visible and invisible Christ. You must read ecclesiology in the same way we read Christology, right? There was one Christ, not a multitude of Christs.
Exactly.
Right? There's one church, which we all agree on, not a multitude of churches. Right? So that's my only thing. Is I guess there's dimensions to the church, just like there's dimensions to the hypostasis of Christ. But I think if we tend away from Christological language, it gets really problematic really quickly.
Yeah.
As to the question about the grandmother, the hypothetical Jehovah's Witness grandmother, we don't assume the bema. We don't take on the judgment seat. Only Christ, in His mercy, can judge who is damned, right? So ultimately, which that's a whole other conversation about like invincible ignorance and all sorts of other degrees of. So I wouldn't answer that. It's up
ordinarily we can say it's like anybody out. There is no salvation outside the church. We can say that.
We still hold to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we could definitively hold to that. Like anyone outside the church, there is no salvation. But that is just I would say our ordinary means. God can still choose to save someone outside the church, and we use invincible ignorance as a description of such an event. But again, God's not outside the means of who He determines to preserve from the fires of hell or not. He makes that call. He's not bound by that. We are. Ordinarily, we all should be part of that church that Christ established, so that we can know and be assured of our salvation, is how I would answer that. So it's like, I don't know. God could choose to save her. He could also choose not to. That choice is his. It's kind of just a more of a word salad way of Hammer's answer.
So for me, I think like, especially for Protestantism, right, in general, like the confessional, like I think it's gonna be very difficult even for me to try to at times, because there are times where Athanasius and other church fathers believe in the invocation of the saints, right? And eventually there will be a period of time where the church was clearly like there can be some reasonable development, we could say, for invocation of the saints, right? And Second Nicaea, right, declared it as dogma, and there is a genuine, like, rich tradition of invocation of the saints, but we deny it, right? And so, but then we at the same time will say that is even when the church will declare the things that we condemn, right, we'll still have to say that the church never died. So it could be a challenge. But for me, like, there was this, I want to discuss about this topic, and I want to know what you guys think about it, because so there was this guy in Discord that told me that Protestantism is false because there's a genuine tradition invocation of the saints, right? Maybe there were times where this practice was disputed, but it was resolved. Right? If you claim to be part of that church that Jesus established, he was asking, how can I justify it when there has been a continual history of invocation of the saints for hundreds of thousands of years? So, like, there are certain things that, I think he raised some good points. What do you think?
This is going to be spicy, but I mean, Jesus, when he was on the cross, they thought he was invoking Elijah, and they didn't seem to bat an eye. So, I don't know. I think not that that's like a standard proof text, but the point being is that even in Jewish culture, the invocation of the saints wasn't seen as an aberration or anything wrong. I would say that denying the implication, right, of denying the invocation of the saints, it's a move that I would describe as cutting off the nose to spite the face, only because you are denying the dimensionality of the church. And a lot of the promises that are vested in Christ, right? Like, either we abide in him and are still part of the body, or somehow that separates us and they can no longer hear or partake or, fully commune in the body, right? So that's where I kind of see it. I don't know, Mike or
Well, yeah. So not all Protestants are the same on this, because you have Anglicans who do have the invocation of the saints, for example,
and Lutherans, which I
no, they don't. They don't.
Yeah, they do.
Anglo-Catholics affirm invocation of the saints, but they're not Anglicans.
Oh, Anglican. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna.
In other words, the Anglican Church allows. In other words, is what I mean. Is the
I don't think they do.
There is nothing.
It's in the 39 Articles.
It is, yeah. And so there's nothing that's specifically against. Is my point? Is there's nothing against the invocation. There might be things against the relics, for example. I know that's in the 39 Articles, but when it specifically comes to just the invocation of the saints themselves, because of the fact that, as John says, this is something that is inherited from the Jewish tradition. So it's not something that was developed, as the later.
But the Anglican reformers vastly rejected invocation.
Yeah, I know they did. Well, I know some of them did. I don't think Luther did.
So there is a difference between agnowledging the existence of the saints. Yeah. There is this difference of acknowledging it, and although Anglo-Catholics sometimes bring back the invocations, they have no issues of acknowledging the existence of the saints in heaven, and can say you can deeply respect them and maybe not have use them as a reflection to improve your life. You can use them as inspirations because of what God did, but they would not typically encourage you to say hey, Saint John the Baptist, pray for me. They would not encourage that, but the acknowledgement of it is still there. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah, the point is that there's actually not really a strong argument against it. Like, you could say, well, I can't really see it anywhere in Scripture. I understand that argument. But the argument that I make for intercession is actually purely from logic. It's just a logical, you have these certain premises that lead to a conclusion, and there's nothing that really goes against the invocation of the saints if the Christian premise is true. So if the Christian premise that we hold that God became man, and that through this incarnation he reconciles heaven and earth, and that he draws those that he has saved into heaven, so they're no longer dead, Christ who is the life. So you have this premise that those who die in Christ are not dead. And I don't think usually Protestants don't deny that premise, that those who have died in Christ are alive, right? You'll get some, I guess, Protestant circles that will deny that will reject that. It depends on their interpretation of certain Scripture, but generally speaking, most, especially the Reformed, which I would argue are the true Protestant denominations, they don't reject that idea. The idea that those who have died in Christ are alive in heaven. So then the pushback, which is the main pushback in the Protestant, or in the certain Protestant circles, which is we should not, or we ought not, so there's a moral implication, we ought not pray to the dead, or we ought not invoke the dead. You have to write that off. That is no longer a foundation for the critique. So the Christian critique is actually just simply an inherited tradition, especially championed in Christ, I would say.
Well, I think that the dispute of the invocation of the saints really did start to come more in the Second Nicaea, when the dispute between the iconophiles and iconoclasts occurred, right? When they started to have a major conflict about veneration and what type of veneration can we give, what's appropriate, right? And then that's when they were like, hold on, what about the invocation of the saints? Where's the veneration? Is that veneration appropriate, right? So that's where it really got into dispute, right? And then eventually, Second Nicaea ruled on, invocation, right,
Yeah.
to be good,
But that's just
to be a dogmatic practice. But then still, we know that it still really took a long time.
Right, but the thing that
for
took
the
a long
Western Church
time.
to.
Yeah, but the logic itself is my point. The idea that just because there was someone who was challenged it, first of all, shows that it persisted. It was already there for them to challenge it. You don't actually really see any challenge to invocation of the saints early.
No, we
it's
do,
a later
right?
challenge.
No, we do see it early on.
Who
but
challenges invocation early?
Yeah, so Athanasius and Augustine, Athanasius and Jerome defended invocation of the saints against. Give me a second.
The two saints defended invocation.
Yeah, that's the two major saints, right? Give me a second.
That's my point, though.
It can't. I don't remember exactly who at the top of my head. I'll get you the name, but who? Vigilus.
Okay.
Yeah, Vigilus. Yeah. So, but as I told you, I already mentioned that, like, Athanasius and Jerome believed in invocation of the saints. Probably Augustine too. The fourth century church probably, by and large, probably did accept invocation. Although, like, it wasn't like but I don't know exactly. Like, I don't think Vigilus was condemned. They just defended, right? It wasn't a big problem to be escalated into an ecumenical council, and there are other bigger worries about, right? So that's so. Right. But still, for me, I feel like because Second Nicaea finally like affirmed that it's a dogmatic practice. Before that, it's like there are many church fathers that engaged in it. There are some that didn't. It was like that for a while, and they respected it. It became a problem.
Yeah.
It became more of a serious problem to discuss this in an ecumenical council in Second Nicaea, and then eventually, like, it was accepted dogmatically, universally, right? And then it was that way for a long time, right? Now, but still, for me, it's like, okay, we reject Second Nicaea, right? But then we also say that the church never died. So for me, like, that will still be like would you think that this is a conflict that we had to wrestle with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would.
Acolyte?
Yeah, I'm in the same category. It's something we can wrestle with, but this is why we have the church, so that even if it's something that we may struggle with, we know we can still fall back on the church, who is divine, who brings the divine, who through Christ's promise has the divine protection when it comes to faith and morals. They cannot err. So when they make these decrees on the matters of faith and morals, especially like dogmatic decrees, we could trust that this is what God. We could trust that this comes directly from the apostolic deposit, just in a more expanded upon way. So
for me,
it's something we struggle with, we could turn to it and trust it because it was God.
No, I said the Protestants struggle with it.
Yeah, Protestants, yeah.
This is. Don't you think that this is an important topic for a Protestant to wrestle?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get into that quickly. I thought I see why the confusion existed, because you talked. Individual apostasy. No.
Yeah.
This is the deal breaker, right? This is one of the main reason many Protestants become Catholic or Orthodox. Don't you guys think so?
Partly, yeah. For me, that was.
Oh, you're an ex-Protestant?
Yeah, I'm an ex-JW.
What denomination?
JW.
Oh, Jehovah.
Oh, you went to actual grandma too.
Yeah.
Oh, I got.
I thought that up because it was real.
So nice to me not correcting me when I said hypothetical grandma. Thank you.
Not even.
No, it was a real grandma.
The real grandma.
You said
it's
hypothetical. Shame on you.
Yeah. No, but that was one of the big reasons that I considered Christianity. Period, was the continuity continuity issue, the issue of apostolic succession. Essentially, I didn't think of it in those terms, but the idea that there would be some sort of break in between the apostolic age and what we would call the restoration age.
Well,
the JWs call it 1878 or whatever. So I know that the the traditional Protestant reformers didn't hold this sort of restorationist view.
Of course not, they did, right? But we do know that Munster and the Quakers, right? They believe that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what's their name called? I forgot. Oh man, is it the Quakers?
The Society of Friends?
No. You know the groups
the Quakers.
in the Reformers, the Luther. You know who he had biggest issue with?
I thought it was Zwingli.
No, another one.
Oh, another one. Another one.
Another group. Oh man, what's the name? I forgot. Munster was like one of the leading guys, right?
Yeah.
Munster? Like the cheese?
Munster.
Yeah, like the cheese.
Hold on, let me see. Anabaptist.
Anabaptist.
Yeah, the Anabaptist.
Yeah, the Anabaptists.
I had to Google that, by the way.
Restorationists, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of forgot about it. Like they start with the word Baptist.
Yeah, Anabaptist.
The Anabaptist.
The simple Mike, do you think that the restorationist position is more logically coherent than the Reformation position?
No.
I really want to know.
That was a quick answer. No.
It's not.
Really?
No.
At some point, for me, logically, I think they could be more like coherent.
No, dude, don't. Are you doing?
Because they'll say that whatever teaching that the church has universally declared, right?
Right, that's true.
Throughout the time, it's going to be false, right? That's what they came to restore. But if there's a universal practice, right, that goes against the confession of Protestant, right? Like that is a very big issue because the universality of a doctrine is one of the bulwarks and the protector of the truth. Right? For us, it's authoritative. So like this is why for me it is serious, right? It's like you get what I mean? So the restorations can simply explain that away, right? They say, the church died, we came to revive. But confession apostle can't do that to save their assets, right?
Yeah, I think like all that really does is just goes to, because the thing about the JWs is that they're unified. They have this sort of holistic framework, and it goes to the point of you don't see people leaving the JWs and starting their own JW movement because of the nature of the restoration. At least their version of their restoration, which is we are the true church. They profess that they are the one and only true church, right?
If they have the correct interpretation of scripture.
Yeah, and so like if you have that sort of as a foundation, that does sort of distinguish you, but only pragmatically. It only does it sort of like what would you say? So like there are so many people that are within the JW organization that disagree fundamentally with certain teachings, but they're not going to do anything about it. And it's not as if the salvific issue is if you are a good member of the JWs. That's what leads to salvation.
Yeah, right. I did kind of want to. I'm a little confused when you said the holistic thing, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure wasn't there like a succession crisis, like between like 1917 and 1931?
Yeah, there was a break in the early days. It can't happen in these days, but in the early days,
I would acknowledge it probably wouldn't happen in these days. But in the holistic JW history, the same thing.
I forget what they became. There was a group that broke off and they became something else.
Seventh-day Adventists happened.
No, that was even earlier.
That was before that.
Yeah, the JWs emerged out of the same movement. So there's the same movement in the East Coast of America of
Bible student movement. That's what it was.
Yeah, the Bible student.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, exactly. But you have the Seventh-day Adventists and the JWs, the Bible students,
the Mormons.
You have all these sort of restorationist groups coming out of the same fervor of the mid to late 1800s.
Yeah, the Second Great Awakening, I think it took place.
Yeah, the Second Great Awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, me and Disciple over here, I probably have like a lot more in common because I also have a restorationist background. I was Mormon.
He's a Mormon.
You were Mormon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was a Mormon. Yeah.
Hey man, once a Mormon, always a Mormon, though.
Yeah. You know, I have my family baptizing me on their behalf. You know.
Yikes! Dang.
Hey, dude, my ancestors are in Kolob convert. Can you say the same?
Mine are in the Celestial Kingdom. Can you say the same?
Whoa!
Yeah, you know what's very funny? What's the most interesting from the Restorationist Church is the ICOC, International Church of Christ, or the what's the new one? I forgot. They have new names now, right? ICOC.
What movement? What movement is this?
Branch.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah.
International Churches of Christ, ICOC. Yeah.
But
they say that they're the ones who are at the true church.
So they are restorationists too.
Yeah, but they're Trinitarian.
Okay.
Well, at least they got that for them.
Yeah.
And they also believe in baptismal regeneration. But they're more radical. So they'll say that even if you believe but didn't get baptized, then you go to hell.
Wow. Wow. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unique.
That is where we would probably differ. It's like because baptismal regeneration restores the soul, brings back.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point out that I do think that one thing that the restorationist movements do have that kind of alleviates the cognitive dissonance that the reformers initially encountered when they separated from the church is that they can say with more ease, like, oh, hey, you know, we're the church was gone, you know, between 33 AD and now there was nothing before, you know, we came, or there's a remnant that was hidden, and they'll like kind of you know, esoterically align themselves with like heretical groups. But I know like during the initial reform, you know, Luther and Calvin both had to take some very strong stances against the Pope in order to kind of rectify the fact that, hey, you know, this separation would be pretty damning. And they're like, well, no, it's because the Pope's the Antichrist, not because of the church, because they never once repudiated the church. Yeah, exactly. They repudiated the Pope. So that was the.
Yeah, that's a fundamental reality that I think gets ignored in apologetics. I think what Luther and Calvin were trying to do was not trying to do what you see happen today, where someone
they were trying to be like St. Francis of Assisi, but they sucked
exactly. That's exactly right. They were great admirers of the tradition. They love the tradition.
But they suck. Well,
they saw themselves as Catholic, right? That's the whole point.
Right?
But for me, this is where we would have the edge over the Restorationists, right? Like we'll say that, you know, like the Bible and everything else, they come from the Catholic Church. There are many true teachings that they had because they were guided by the Holy Spirit, right? It's just that there's time to time where we go astray, just like how Israel did. There were times where they worship many gods and built many pagan temples, right? This is their logic, rationale, right? And so the church at times can be in the heretical state, right, for throughout the ages, but then eventually heresies will be thwarted. It doesn't mean that heresies will always be taught forever. You know what I mean? Because Matthew 16 verse 17 to 19 is clear that the gates of Hades will not prevail, right? And the historic reformer position is that heresy can never truly overwhelm the church completely, right? That is you get what I'm saying, right? And so, and because of that, right, there are so many critiques that will come out, right, where we'll bring the church fathers, we'll bring the councils, right, we're trying, even if we did it wrongly, right? And we interpret these things out of context, we are trying to do it sincerely, right? And so, we're trying to do it in the perspective as part of the Catholic Church. So because of that, for me, I feel like I can be more logically consistent with my critique of Catholicism than a non-denominational Protestant, right? And how they use the Nuda Scriptura.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like that's where I think we'll have more of the edge, right?
Yeah. Exactly. There's continuity. There's continuity that the gates of Hades will not prevail.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Throughout.
But one of them were ordained in the Catholic Church. That's the whole point, right? This is why, like, they're like, we're not making stuff up. We got this from our previous teacher. What are you talking about? We're so confused. You now, like, they're all called heretics. They're being kicked out. Some of them left, right? Like, Cranmer and the Anglican people, right? They left. But then for me, I'm like, but the Continental Reform, they are forced to get kicked out, right? Including the Lutherans too, right? So it is what it is.
Yeah.
I feel like in terms of age of apostasy, eventually we have to talk about the Mormons, right? Also, for me, what the most interesting argument will be is that they'll say that in the fourth century the church died.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, right.
It depends too. It depends.
It depends on the Mormon.
Yeah, true. You're right.
It does depend on the Mormon, but typically here is the typical answer you'll hear from Mormons, that after the apostles died, the upholding of that original apostolic deposit of faith would eventually slowly lose its thing, and up until the Nicene Council, the first Nicene Council, it was around that time they won't say definitively, but they would heavily imply that's when the great apostasy was fully apparent, and that the true faith fell away, and that these creedal Christians took precedent over the original Christians.
But you know what's so interesting is around that period, right, where semi-Arians and Arians really overwhelmed the Trinitarian Church, right? Yeah. This is where, for me, like, I think there's the biggest case where it could be that is the age of apostasy right there. Yeah. But does that mean that the church died there? No. We'll say no. But for me, like, when I look at that period, like around like 340 all the way to 360, that time period, yeah, it does seem like they did. It seems like there could be a case where people can argue the church died there.
Well, you could make the argument, but that doesn't mean it's true. So the real question is like, what would determine a great apostasy? Because if you're talking mainly mentioning the Arian crisis, technically, the church never truly died, because not all bishops were Arians. We had Athanasius, we had Augustine.
Well, you know what troubles me.
But did the church definitively teach and dogmatically decreed the Arian heresy? No.
But what do you think about allowing heresy?
Yeah, it depends. I think,
because for me, like, I still think that this is a problem at the very least that Catholics can have sympathy towards, is because, like, Sabellianism was allowed, right? Like Athanasius was great friends with Sabellius until Nicaea, right? So there were a period before an ecumenical council where heresies were accepted. Yeah. Right? And so for me, what does that how do you guys like reconcile with it? Because sometimes that really disturbs me, and sometimes like
well, I mean, all grounded in the Bible again. I mean, like, the original early followers of the way coexisted with Docetic Gnostics and Judaizers. Like, and they talked. I mean, they went to the Council of Jerusalem. They were surrounded by Judaizing Christians. The elders debated this topic. I mean, I would say that.
Did they establish communion? Did they allow these teachings to be spread, tolerated? or even encouraged or respected.
Prior to the council, there was disputation. I imagine. I mean, it was still being sorted out. So the council is what sorted it, just like the council sorted civilianism. I mean, it's just that when the church weighs in, it's like, okay, well, we're starting to see some divergence. That's part of the adjudicative authority of the church. That's why it's like, hey, well, and we have that template from the.
Yeah, that's what it's like. I would just keep it. I would just kind of keep it simple, because when you ask the question, it's like, why does the church allow heresy? It's like,
I really have to go to the washroom.
At the end of the day, it's like.
Oh, you're gonna go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
I'll re-answer when you get back.
Right when Riley says, he gets into the I'm going to the bathroom. Dude, just bring a bucket like I do. The League of Legends bucket.
just go to Walmart and get an adult diaper.
You lock in. We're in the street. You lock in.
Lock in, bro. Yeah, no excuse. There's no excuse.
Let me just say it, and I'll say it to you when it gets back. Because when you ask the question, why does the church allow heresy? The answer
is it doesn't. The short answer is it doesn't.
It's like ultimately the reason heresy is even in the church is because it contains humans. Humans are not infallible.
The root word of heresy is just you go your own way.
Yeah, but it's just like, but the church never taught heresy, never explicitly decreed heresy.
Well, that's why even the Arian crisis is not a like if the qualifier for the great apostasy is that the church as a whole must fall. I would reject the premise as a whole, because that would violate the promises of Christ. I mean, So I would say that that is a qualifier for the apostasy in our paradigm, where it's like, hey, a great amount of people were following an erroneous belief, because at one point Arians were ascendant, they were the majority. That would not mean that the church is going to fall, though. That's where I would draw the line.
Yeah, it's like the church never taught heresy can't exist. What it's teaching is that heresy cannot become the faith of the church itself.
I also to address the point even more. And I think this is the point that bothers me, or that bothered me at some point, was always like, well, especially coming from a restorationist movement. So I have this sort of like this, what would you say, this proclivity to be sort of like hyper sensitive to these sort of, I guess, church wide heretical things. This idea that we lose the church, right? Sort of sensitive to that idea. But one of the things that bothered me was, well, then it still begs the question of, well, why did this have to happen in the first place? Because you can wrestle with the Arian crisis in and of itself. You can wrestle with Arianism in and of itself, right? You can debate an Arian.
Yes.
In scripture, you can go back to the church fathers and see what their arguments are and all these sorts of things. But then you can also take a step back and say, well, why did the Arian crisis have to happen at all?
Yeah.
And what you can actually gain some good, what I would consider some good faith strengthening fruits from the Arian crisis. We would not have the Nicene Creed without the Arian crisis, for example. There are literal, phrases in the Nicene Creed that we get directly addressing Arianism.
Yes, correct.
What I have contended to say, and what helps me at least, is, and you can use this with any heresy. Is basically that no matter what heresy there's going on at the time, it's for a reason, right? There's ultimately a greater resolution that's going. There's something that's going to be resolved that actually strengthens the church greater than where it was before. And I think the Arian crisis is a great example of that.
But do you guys think that if the Arian crisis lasted for 2,000 years, would that be okay?
Well, here's
anointed heretical bishops,
but
for 10,000 years.
Yeah,
10,000 years in Arian.
I want to address this because you brought this up so much. Regardless of the time frame, if this was a whole, you're trying to bring up like, what if it went on this way? Regardless, what's the premise of it? You're really just tackling like, it's like, why does the church allow heresy? And it's just like, it's never going to teach heresy. It does not teach heresy. Heresy cannot exist. When the reason heresy exists is because human beings are within the church.
Yeah.
They are active members.
But look,
the Arian crisis mainly just is evidence that bishops can fail in their understanding and teaching, but that does not say that the church fails in its teaching, because the church never taught heresy.
Yeah,
bishops can teach heresy, but not the church.
But Mike, like when there are people that spread the heresies, and guys like Athanasius and Jerome and other people tolerated and actually said that this is okay to believe in. And then suddenly, they say no, it's not anymore.
But again,
it's completely forbidden, and we have to kick these people off.
Are not infallible. They are subject to their own personal error.
Yeah, you have to.
But if they have their own opinion.
But I would say this as well, and so I have this sort of opinion about these heresies, where Saint Athanasius, who's one of my favorite saints, would not be Saint Athanasius if it was not for the Arians. Okay, and I say this in a very you can actually go pretty deep with this idea. The idea is that God allows there to be error, heresy, sin, the pagan persecution, for example. You could say God allows there to be evil in order for the revelation of the saints.
Yes.
In the idea that the saints arise to the occasion, right? And I think that goes. We're touching on some deep subject matter here, but I think for example, for the Arian crisis, I think the Arian crisis was something almost inevitable. It had to have happened because of the things that were wrestling in those early days. The Christological, there are certain Christological things that needed to be ironed out, especially early on.
Yeah.
But they make us who we are in one sense. In one sense, it strengthens our understanding of who Christ is, of the Trinity. It strengthens these core principles by the very aspect of the Arians having challenged. It's almost like when someone poses you a question that you hadn't thought of in that way before, you then have to address that question in a way that is still faithful to what you believe, but it allows you. It's like it gives you an opportunity to strengthen your position.
But for
I think
me,
this is just a universal
where
rule.
I come from.
Real quick,
where I come from, because if a church allows a heresy to go on for thousands of years, like, is that okay? Because I feel like your reason right now, if a church allows a heresy to become public.
So real quick, I got two things. The first one is that to Disciple Mike's point, God does allow the commission of evil in order that the commission of a greater good can happen. Like Augustine said, we would not have Stephen if it was not for, like, we would not have Paul if it wasn't for Stephen, right? That the martyrdom of Stephen needed to happen in order for us to get Paul. That's part of this thing. The other thing is that, Gnosticism still exists. Like, is the existence of Gnosticism like a black spot on the church? Yeah. It's existed for 2,000 years. Before, because it's Greek philosophy.
Gnosticism is not really part of the church, right? We never.
They would not. They would say something different. They would say that they are They would say that they're holding to the faith more.
They'll say that.
My question is the extermination of heretics and heretical beliefs the responsibility of the church, or is it just holding to the truth?
Right.
It's actually different, because for me, like, we never consider them to be the church, right? We never recognize their authority, right? We actually demanded them to show the bishop lineage, right? The lineage of their bishops, right? Tertullian demanded Marcion to show that list, right? Like Irenaeus, right? He said that his disciple is Polycarp, which is the disciple of John, right? Like they ask proof, right? So for me, I feel like that's not the issue. The issue will be, like, if there are people, if there are heretics that were anointed by the church as bishops that gave them the authority to teach, and then they start to teach heresy, right? And they were able to do this for 1,000 years. And then eventually we realized that it was a heresy, and we declare as a heresy. We basically allowed the bishops to teach heretically for 1,000 years.
But then that gets into the sanctity of the bishops, and that's the thing that gets down to what happened with the Donatists with St. Augustine. St. Augustine acknowledged that the Donatists had a good structural foundation; they had a proper apostolic authority. But what condemned them is that they severed themselves from the church. So it's like, but this comes down to it. The sanctity of the bishop does not take away from the church's authority. It does not take away from it. It just proves, especially with the Arian crisis, again, the Arian crisis proved that bishops can err ultimately, but just because they can err does not mean the church falls. And it's just like, just because, so when you ask these questions, you're basically just restating this. Hey, we answer your question. You're like, but then why did they continue teaching heresy? Why did this keep happening? Because again, humans just make mistakes. But humans, we're dummies. We're dummies, dude. We're gonna make mistakes. So
is it okay? But is it okay for a church to teach heresies for 1,000 years?
No,
obviously we're going to say no, but
the onus would be on showing which church taught heresy, because I don't know one for thousands of years.
Because like if eventually certain doctrinal positions are declared to be condemned, right? If there's a new ecumenical council that emerges, right? And we realize that for 2,000 years, okay, there was this particular heresy that this new council, a new ecumenical council, declared as heresy. But we see throughout the church, many church fathers and medieval theologians have taught this. You can say that obviously, and you can clearly see this, maybe like from 3rd, 4th century all the way to now, right? Would that be okay?
Well,
because if you say yes.
Well, we can use an example like the limbo of the infants, right? I mean, that's a notional theological opinion that's persisted, but it hasn't been dogmatically defined by the church. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we have a different criteria for what we would consider the teaching of heresy as opposed to like an opinion that's a theological persistence, right?
Do you think that if babies still get baptized, they go to hell?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a
theological opinion? It's a legitimate theological opinion.
Do you think that's a heretical opinion?
But it's not. I wouldn't say it's heretical.
No, because heresy is. I get really. I mean, I don't know, dude. The heresy has a pretty clear definition of like required persistence in the light of what has been taught in baptism. Mm-hmm. I think like even calling Protestants heretics is kind of like
I agree.
Yeah, it's not apt because that would require like obstinance that they don't have. Yeah. And falling away from the church that they never even knew. So that I don't know. Like I think that it would be heretical if you were corrected on it, and you still, like you were given the truth, you're corrected on it, and you still persist in a view like
exactly.
that. Yeah,
I would say that's why heresy is a sin of pride. It's ultimately a sin of
it's an obstinate denial of truth.
Yeah, post baptism. Post baptism.
Well, so to be clear, guys, the church cannot allow a heresy to go on for 1,000 years or 10,000. Yes.
Like, what do you? I guess you still know.
Like, Gnosticism is still going. Arians are still not allow heresy like for any period of time.
Like,
but then the question is just like how we address it.
And one thing I want to be clear on is that even Paul touches on this is like, hey, we judge who is within the church. Who are we to judge those without? So that's why, like, if we're talking about the existence or persistence of heresy or heresies, ancient heresies to this modern day, it's out of the purview of the church militant. I mean, really, it is. Like, it's up to God to do that judgment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's why, like, for me, like, I guess what is the criterion for like allowing or disallowing heresy? Like,
like I guess you could formulate to try to steel man. How do you say your name, John?
June.
No, this is a question, right? Because for me, sometimes I struggle because, like, I know for a fact that Sabellianism was tolerated. I know for a fact that there were many Trinitarians that they have communion with Sabellius and his followers. I know that Sabellianism could be traced, possibly the third, maybe even the second, right? And so for me, when I look at this, right, and I tell myself, oh man, is it okay if the church allows Sabellianism for the first 300 years? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
yeah,
I don't know.
I could use a modern example or a contemporary example. There was a stream of theological thinking in regards to the real presence in the Eucharist that Karl Rahner put forward in Vatican II. He actually he pushed for us to change transubstantiation in Vatican II. He wanted us to say that it's actually less real. It's more real for us to say that there is a transsignification, that the sign of the bread and the wine changes the body and blood of Christ. And he's a Catholic theologian who's saying this stuff. And so I could pose an argument saying that, let's just say, for example, Karl Rahner, he's very influential, incredibly influential Catholic theologian, philosopher. Let's say he garnered a movement, and there are a lot of people who just really followed what he was saying, and they all believe in transsignification as opposed to transubstantiation, let's say. And this view has persisted up till today. Well, we would still push back against transsignification, right? We'd still push traditional transubstantiation. But then the idea is like I could affirm this idea that there are Catholics today who deny transubstantiation. If you were to push them, if you were to push hard enough, you would say that there are some Catholics, faithful Catholics, you might say, who deny transubstantiation. In other words, they wouldn't actually be faithful. But okay, put those ideas aside. Let's just say that there's this heresy that is sort of bubbling up in the contemporary church. Well, we're still communing with them when we go to Mass every Sunday, right? They're in our pews, they're with us. There might even be some priests who hold this heresy of transsignification as opposed to the transubstantiation argument. So as a matter of fact, in other words, per se, we are communing in this instance with those who are believing this heresy.
Like the progressive Catholics, right?
Or, pretty much.
Father James Martin. But for me, imagine people like Father James Martin and the church were still part of the church and they were not kicked out, right? For 800 years. And finally they were, right? Let's just say that. They didn't. That's okay. Now for me, what I'll say is that
but then that becomes a little arbitrary because then who's to say what's too long and what's not enough, right?
Like for me, like 2 decades, 3 decades, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Who cares? 100 years. Sometimes fine, it could happen. It could
let's push it to the most extreme.
Wait. But Mike, let's be real.
Extreme. Let's say that the heresy persists to the very end.
Can't just fish. There are many church fathers, right? And I know this for a fact. Okay, and there are many medieval theologians that believe, right, the earth, okay, the earth was flat, or the sun, right, just stood there. You know what I mean?
You mean the sun revolved around the earth?
Yeah, the sun revolved around the earth.
Geocentric.
Yeah, geocentric.
Or heliocentric model. Or no, heliocentric model is what we have now. Geocentric model was what we had.
Yeah, geocentric model was like the view of many church fathers.
The sun revolves around the earth.
Yeah. For hundreds of years.
Yeah,
possibly
it's not a heresy.
But it's not a heresy. Not really.
It's not a heresy.
But it is very anti-scientific.
Maybe not.
If you think about it,
it's possible.
Right?
I mean, I got a counterpoint. Why did God allow the Sadducees to coexist with the Pharisees when they believed in some pretty aberrant things? I mean, yeah. I genuinely, they were part of the same Sanhedrin, and they were able to.
Yeah. Like, and you can even say it like this.
We will use this to justify that the church is fallible, right? We use that.
Well,
right?
we could say that. We could say this: we hold esteemed saints in the Franciscan tradition that will adamantly disagree with those in the Thomist tradition.
Yes.
And you can't say that they're both true.
Right.
One is going to be true, or neither is true. That's you'd say, like, logically speaking.
It'd be more like the Pope eventually comes out and declares Molinism as a heresy, or declares the Franciscan as and their beliefs a heresy, and tells them to recant their objections toward Thomists.
Right.
Now the Franciscans have existed for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
They
almost.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The Pope has the authority to do that, especially if he's under office and if he's actually
but
under
only
cathedra.
So this
goes back to in the ecumenical council.
Yeah, this goes back to the prudential aspect of declaring something heresy. It's not just arbitrary. It's not as if the Pope just decides one day, I don't really like this view, I don't like this teaching, I'm going to decide that it's heresy. There's always a prudential aspect, meaning there's something that's going on in the church.
You could say that with almost everybody, even restorationists. They don't say, we restore the church because we don't feel like it, we don't like them.
But my point is this.
They actually think that they're guided by God to do so, right?
Yeah, but my point is we are able to be in communion, in one body that allows and has communion with both Franciscans and Thomists together. They have very different metaphysical presuppositions or conclusions, I guess. They have very different ways of looking at metaphysics, but we're able to live in harmony and have communion with each other, even though we might disagree on some fundamental things. Now, we're not going to deny aspects of the faith, though. We're not going to deny.
That doesn't mean that they'll always stay the same, because at some point, right, the Franciscans can be excommunicated or the Thomists.
Well,
right?
I don't know. I don't think it could be. I don't think something like that can happen. I think there's something like, for example.
You don't think that's possible?
I don't think that's possible. I think what can happen is certain elements, certain you could say definitions of articles of the faith. The definitions of the articles of the faith can be defined further. In other words, like, for example, in the 12th century, there's the idea that you can't actually say or I think this is actually reiterated in the First Vatican Council, that you can't say that you cannot prove the existence of God through reason alone, for example. You try to say that today, and there's a lot of Catholics who might deny that, and there might even be fragments of movements that will say that might not disagree with that, but they'll push against that. They'll say, no, you have to believe it by just faith alone, the existence of God itself. But that isn't to say that the movements themselves are condemned. Even when we condemn, for example, Nestorius or Arius, we always will say, let them be anathema, those who follow these particular teachings of Arius, Nestorius, etc. It's not just
I get that, right? But at the end of the day, right, Arianism, right?
What we call Arianism,
is significantly defined by Christology, right? And also, that Jesus is created, right?
Yeah.
When we condemned it, many left. Right?
Yeah.
And so eventually we are no longer communing with the Arians. Likewise, let's say there's a core belief of the Franciscans that is declared as a heresy, and they refuse to recant that, then eventually they're all gonna leave.
Yeah, that's why I would push back and
that's
say
what I mean. So sometimes, right, the Franciscans may never exist. right? Or the Thomists may never exist anymore as part of your church because there'll be certain beliefs that they had. Maybe somewhere in the future, an ecumenical council or an ex-cathedra statement would declare that per belief as a heresy. And that is a real possibility, right? You cannot tell me that's impossible.
No, I would say that's impossible because the core fundamental beliefs of Franciscanism, you could say, are the things that are fundamental to the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with the Thomists, etc. Yeah. Now, there might be, I would grant, there might be a flavor of Franciscanism or Thomism even, let's just say.
Like for me, like the idea of, God moving necessary agents, right?
Yeah.
To necessary acts, including evil, right? The Catholic Church could someday declare that as heresy. Now, that is one of the most fundamental aspects of Thomism. Okay? Now, let's just say the Thomists say, no, this is part of the long-standing tradition, right? So they refuse to recant it. Well, like, don't you think that can be possible? Like, this is very controversial. And sometimes controversies in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, but it's not essential to Thomism. We wouldn't say it's essential to Thomism.
Nor is it essential to Catholic belief, because there are a lot of things that Thomas Aquinas taught, even in the Summa, that are not dogmatized. And again, we can chalk up to theological error, like his treatment of the of Mary, for instance, right?
Yeah, he didn't believe in the Immaculate
Conception. That does not color the whole of the church. And even at one point, the reality becomes like, okay, well, do you recant this permutation of a belief, or do you remain with the church, right?
But for me, like, those are not the essential. Those are not what the defining aspect of Thomism. There are many Thomists that believe in the Immaculate Conception, right?
Well,
but for me, all Thomists do believe that God does move the necessary free agent to the necessary act, including sin. This is the defining belief of them. It's
not necessary, though.
Yeah.
What do you mean necessary? Correct. They all believe it. Like,
well, they could.
If you don't believe it, then you're not Thomas.
Okay, well, a lot of people could just say, well, I don't. It's like we all agree that gravity is not real. That doesn't change the fact that gravity is not real. Just because a bunch of people believe in one thing doesn't change the intrinsic reality.
No, what I'm saying is that if the particular group tells you that this is what we believe, right, and everyone believes it, and no one rejects it. Yeah. And if somebody comes out and they say rejected, and the Thomists will not recognize you as a Thomist rejected.
Yeah, but you can
say it is clearly very essential aspect of their systematic theology.
Not essential though, because you could say, can you imagine just for logic's sake, can you imagine a Thomist changing their view on just that aspect, just that one aspect? I would say, of course.
They could.
It's not essential. It's not essential.
They could if they are very faithful, right, and they truly believe in the church's infallibility, and if this teaching that they have for many years, right, are declared as a heresy, I'm pretty sure they can.
That's why
there can be many.
I want to bring up the Immaculate Conception thing here, because since Thomas Aquinas and Thomism, in its understanding in the Summa, Thomas Aquinas rejected in his own theology the Immaculate Conception. But here's the thing. The Immaculate Conception was not dogmatized, so this was up in the air. Anybody could have rejected it or accepted it because it has not been dogmatically defined yet. So up until it was dogmatically defined, there was a large portion of Thomists that did not hold to the Immaculate Conception. But when it was dogmatically declared, hey, it is now, this is what the church upholds and believes. The Thomists understood what was going on. They say, oh, okay, so that must mean there was a breaking in understanding of what may have happened with Thomas. So they rectified their theology to make sure that it fits within their Thomistic worldview without deviating from the church. Yeah. Now, does that change? So does that mean the rejection in the Immaculate Conception is a necessity to being a Thomist?
No, I never meant that, right?
And the same could be applied to your application. What is the necessity of being a Thomist then? what is, by your standard, what is the necessity to be a Thomist?
Well, the necessity is that the church is infallible, right?
No, I'm saying a Thomist.
That is an essential part of their faith.
Well, yeah, that is,
that they have the infallible teaching authority.
We're talking about Thomistic thought. I would.
But remember, Thomists are Catholics first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they are bounded by the magisterium.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're bounded by the infallible authority of the church, and they believe the infallibility is the infallibility precedes the conscience. Because we as humans are fallible, but the church, because they're guided by the Holy Spirit, when they proclaim a dogma, right, through the conciliar authority or through the Pope in his ex cathedra, our conscience needs to submit to that. Right, this is the defining trait of them. Right, they are Catholic first, always. Now, once some of the beliefs that they truly held, right, in the Catholic Church, right, condemn it as a heresy, right, they should submit to it. But if they don't, then they will no longer be Catholic, right?
Yeah.
They can still be a Thomist, though, and maintain whatever they believe.
Well, Zwingli was a
But
Thomist.
they can never, ever be a Catholic. But
Zwingli was a Thomist. You know that, right?
That is true.
Zwingli was a Thomist, but yet he still schismed. So you could have a Thomistic thought and a Thomistic understanding, but still not be part of the church.
Well,
did Zwingli left, or did he get? Was he kicked out, or did he left? I don't remember Zwingli.
I don't recall, but I do know that Luther said that he was 7 times worse as a Protestant than he was as a Papist, which is really funny to me.
I know.
So it's just like ultimately, that's not really down to the Thomistic understanding. That just comes down to the individual. Yeah. Are they going to submit to the church or not? And if they choose not to submit to the church, then they renounce their Catholic faith.
Yeah, and I wasn't joking when I said that there are Lutherans I've met that have Thomistic beliefs and Thomistic theology. That's a real thing.
Yeah,
but for me, right? Like Thomism, still for me, is integral that they're Catholic first.
Yeah,
formally. You would say formally,
formally.
But Thomism, in terms of his without the capital T, just a small T Thomism. I hope you understand what I mean by that.
Small T Thomism. Then I'm a small S Scotist. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's true. We can't do that, right? Because. So,
just like how Anglicans are small C Catholics, sure.
Yeah, small
C. We're the big C.
The small T, right? They're gonna be defined by their soteriology. They're gonna be defined by their metaphysics, right? They're gonna be defined by their systematic theology, pretty much, right? And their systematic theology will be very unique. However, does that mean that this is essential for them to have? As you're right, it's not, but it is defining trait. It's a significant aspect of their character, but it is still possible that all their systematic theology can be heretical, and the Thomists can still be Thomists. You get what I mean?
I don't know. It's already been defined.
I mean, not everything. The vast majority.
Thomism is a bad example because it has actually been defined by the Pope as sort of the standard of metaphysics. So it's already been infallibly defined.
Not all aspects of Thomism, though. Not all, right?
Yeah, just the general metaphysics. So
the general metaphysics of it. Yeah, but some other components, it can still be declared heretical. You get what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I can give you a great example. The Franciscan movement, which began, of course, with Saint Francis, who is this amazing radical saint. But something fundamental to Franciscanism was poverty, was the radical poverty. And that was something that was really troubled the early movements of Franciscans. That's why there's 100 Franciscan movements, is because they keep having to reform.
There's so many different Franciscans, there's
because the very question that you're asking, June, is what's fundamental to, let's say, for a Franciscan. Well, you'll have the Franciscans say what's fundamental is our poverty, is our relinquishing of all goods. And then it becomes a disagreement or a debate on the extreme of that, because some will say, not even the clothes on my back I own.
I mean, they even tried to correct St. Francis when he was starting it. They're like, dude,
Exactly.
like, seriously, you got to stop this. You're going to starve to death. He's like, the Lord will provide.
And so we actually had a council. We had to make a council due to this sort of idea of our priests and even the clergy, that was really what it came down to. Are the clergy able to own anything? Yes. Because of the power of the Franciscans. And so something fundamental, you can say, a fundamental component of the Franciscans is their poverty. But then it just becomes, well, because it was declared a heresy, basically, to say that priests can't own anything as a general principle.
Yeah.
So that, I think that's a good example of, okay, so there obviously were Franciscans, and there continues to be great Franciscans who hold this opinion that or the monks, or not the monks, but the friars of Franciscans ought not have any property. And they make vows, right? They make these vows because they perceive it to be true Franciscanism.
Right. And the alternative to true Franciscanism is Dulcinianism, which is like the extreme, like mixed with like extreme Franciscan beliefs mixed with Jansenism. And they basically, those are the guys that were saying penitentiagite, right? Do penance. And if you watch like Name of the Rose, that
exactly.
That was the centerpiece of that movie, was the Franciscan debate. Let it be known that Jesus carried a purse. And they all are yelling at each other because they had a debate about ownership and about wealth. So it was a major issue at the time.
Yeah, but like and just to add, and just a fun little thing, Saint Francis of Assisi got in so much trouble with his like level of like extreme poverty. Bro straight up stripped naked, and bishops had to actually like tell him, put on damn clothes.
Yeah. It's true. It's wild.
So wait, and then he converted like
gasoline on the fire.
70,000 Protestants.
I'm gonna throw a little gasoline on the fire here. Does the declaration of the Immaculate Conception hundreds of years after Thomas Aquinas retroactively make him a heretic?
I would say no, because
but for me, I don't think there are some later writings of Thomas Aquinas that we could maybe think that maybe he's open-minded, or maybe he did believe it, or like there's a thing that can allude to it. But for me, what I'll say will be like Chrysostom. Like he legitimately was against that, right? Like he's like, that's not biblical. Mm-hmm. For me, that I'll be like, it's not a heretic because he went against it.
Well, yeah, because the church is not dogmatically declared, so they're not faced with that opportunity, or at least faced with that challenge. Hey, if the church told you this is dogma now, it's dogmatically declared. And if they were alive during their time here on the church militant, if they were to choose they would formally renounce the faith. They would be heretics. Yeah,
schism, right? Yeah.
Not schism. They'd be heretics because after being brought to the light of this truth, they still rejected it. But because it was not made dogma. No, schism is a little more different than because that's more or less breaking off and rejecting the authority of the Pope and the Church as a whole and starting your own movement. Whereas heresy is more or less obstinate refusal to believe in light of the truth and correction. Like if I were to, it's like, I wouldn't say I schism from the church if I were to just deny the Trinity. No, I would be a formal heretic because I've been presented the light of the truth.
What I'll say is John Chrysostom was fighting against people and discouraging, and I think he does condemn it. The Immaculate Conception is not biblical. It is
again.
Right? So for me,
saints like Saint John Chrysostom, just because they are allowed to have their own personal opinions, that does not make whatever thing they teach infallible. A lot of their teachings, the church can define could be infallible. They can make the church can make the decision, but not the saints themselves, because they're still fallible people. I mean, St. Augustine, he literally said, like, you know, Christ was a prefigured person, or at least, you know,
the prefigured man.
Yeah, that was very weird.
Yeah. Like that's controversial. That's a controversial belief Augustine had, but that does not make him a formal heretic. It was just an opinion he held.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is if, right, for example, the Immaculate Conception was declared as dogma in the time of Chrysostom, and Chrysostom keeps insisting that it's a heresy,
then that would be
he's got to be kicked. He refused to stop, and he's so adamant.
Yeah, he would be a formal heretic. Yeah,
that's different.
In the hypothetical. Yeah, in the hypothetical, yes.
What I mean is that there will be a hypothetical schism, and he's got to be declared as a formal heretic.
Well, yeah, if a whole group established, and he his own bishops, yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's not what happened. He's declared as a saint, right?
Yeah, because again,
because that wasn't a dogmatic teaching at the time. I mean,
exactly, because since it wasn't a dogmatic teaching, that is not the standard they hold. So we wouldn't hold. We wouldn't hold pre-Nicene saints like like the apostles to be heretics just because they didn't believe or hold to the fullness of the Nicene Creed. They probably had you could argue they had an understanding and all that, but just because they weren't alive at the time the Nicene Creed was dogmatically declared to be the creed of the faith doesn't make them non-saints. They're still saints because that's not what the church expounded on.
You get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Well, again, you could bring these hypotheticals, but what it's like at the end of the day, it's like, I know you're just trying to work out this issue, but like, at what line do we stop bringing these hypotheticals and just look at the fact of the matter? What is the truth? Is this the truth? And am I going to accept it or not? Everybody can delve into these hypotheticals, but what does it bring at the end of the day? If you're just going to keep bringing them to avoid the truth of the matter.
Well, it's this, right? At some point for me, right, Protestants were part of the church, right?
They were, yeah.
And eventually they're not. And they're kicked out. Some of them left, right?
Well, I would say they refused to rectify the issue at hand when they refused to rectify or at least make amends.
Yeah, sure. Or the reform were close, but it unfortunately didn't pan out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were genuine attempts. I can acknowledge that.
There was a formal agreement between the Thomists and the Reformer to be back in communion. The evangelical Lutherans said no, and so we backed out to respect evangelical Lutherans. But there was a formal agreement back. We're so close to union again, but it didn't come. But I do think there was a formal agreement in place. I mean,
are you talking about like at least the understanding of like grace alone and all that stuff?
Are you talking about JDDJ, the joint doctrine of the joint declaration of the doctrine?
No, during the Reformation.
Justification.
Oh, the Reformation itself.
Yeah, during the Reformation era, the Thomists and
there
Reformers
during the whole
we start to be unified, and we're gonna establish communion.
Well,
we were all going back to the Catholic Church, and we were all excited.
I mean, that's happened with the Eastern Orthodox too. Like, we still have some Eastern Orthodox churches that have come back into full communion. Not the entirety of Eastern Orthodoxy, but there were Eastern Orthodox churches that came back into communion. That's why we have Byzantine Catholics.
We also have an Anglican ordinariate.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. It's like, and so it's not like reunification is impossible. It's a matter of just like us discussing both sides and rectifying the ultimate issue. I mean, we're close to rectifying theological tensions with the Assyrian churches. You know, those who like departed in the Council of Chalcedon. We're in the more meat and potatoes of the issues now, rather than just like, oh well, you're a heretic, you're a heretic. Right. We're really close to reunification. Right. So it's not attempts. We can acknowledge attempts have been made, but people are going to choose. Are we going to follow through with this agreement? Are we going to follow through with the communion or not? And if they choose not, that's their choice. They choose to obstinately choose to reject the faith, reject the truth given to them.
Well, I mean, at some point, right? It's like with the Protestants, we got kicked out, right? We think that what we're doing is a genuine attempt to reform, and we did our best, and it was rejected, and we are kicked out and declared as heretics. And there are certain things that the Catholic Church have done that we just can't see eye to eye, and that's where we are, right? But for me, the thing is, it's like there are certain type of practice that we call accretions that were tolerated for hundreds of years, or 1,000 years, and we'll say that that is fine. That doesn't mean that the church died. There will always be certain type of remnant where they would know the truth.
Yeah.
Right? Not all the truth, but truth very necessary for salvation.
Are accretions enough to break communion contemporarily or in the contemporary world? Let's say if I wanted to join your church, what would I have to deny as a Catholic?
Yeah, how strict does your traditionalism have to become, I guess, to not be considered?
You have to deny the infallibility of the Pope, right? But for me,
so you're saying that's an accretion? That's one of the accretions, or is there more accretions? Like
theological, right? Invocation of the saints. It will be the
veneration of
the So then the invocation of the saints is enough to stop me from becoming a part of your church, you'd say. That's an accretion that is, I guess, serious enough to you would call that heresy, or you would call it inherently heretical.
That's a good question. I'll get back to you on that because I don't know. Because like for example, Calvin will say that it's a very dangerous practice because we're idolatrous in nature. But to say that is an absolute false teaching, equivalent to Arianism, equivalent to Nestorianism. I don't know. Like I don't think that they really thought about that in mind. But we do think that it was there's a discontinuity with the apostolic doctrine, which is obviously scripture. There's a discontinuity there when the invocation of the saints. So the church, the reformers at the time, felt that they were justified and had the authority to condemn this practice. But for me, like in terms of sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, that's all. I'm just waiting for your response.
That's my response.
That's it. Okay.
I was gonna ask, like, what about like contemplation of Christ, right? Because I know, like, is that an accretion? Like, if you think of an image of Christ in your head, is that heretical? Does that put you outside of?
I don't think so. But for me, if it's a veneration of icon, and you think that you can only truly be saved if you accept this practice.
It's not required.
You should, no, I'll say if you truly, and the only way to truly get to heaven, I'm saying the only way, right? To truly get to heaven is by kissing an icon and bowing down to it and praying to it, right? And that's the only way. That obviously I think that's heresy.
Well, then almost the entirety of the Latin Church is heretical because their iconography, like icons in the Eastern conception,
but the Latin Church doesn't believe
iconodulia doesn't occur in Latin churches that way. So
no, but the Latin Church doesn't believe that this is the only way to communicate with God, right? You can pray.
Well, the Orthodox and Eastern Catholics don't either, and they have icons in their churches.
Yeah, and it's just like what in like
it's a window. It's
a
window.
But in terms of accretion,
you could say,
but accretion doesn't mean heresy, right? For us, I actually don't know. Like accretion can be.
Yeah, that's.
I'll get back to you on that. That's a good question because for me, I think an accretion will be an inorganic practice, but it doesn't have to be heretical. Okay. Now,
yeah, inorganic practice. So I guess one thing I was going to ask too is like even like the shift in disciplines, like leavened bread versus unleavened bread. being baptized fully covered in oil after 2 days of fasting and being naked versus what we do now for baptism. Like, at what point do we have to reduce accretions back to something more traditional where we just conjure up a second temple and we're back to, eating the shrewd bread? Like, that's kind of what I see this with traditionalists too. It's like there's this point where it's like, oh well, that's new, I don't like that. Or is it preference or is it actually principled, right?
But at some point, we all have to believe that there are the existence of accretions. Your church teaches that there will be the weeds within the wheat, right?
You believe in a development of doctrine.
Exactly.
No. What I'm saying is, you guys do believe in the necessity that the church will always have to reform, right? The church is not indefectible; they're just evolved.
Well, it's a living church, we'd say. It's always alive for the contemporary world.
Christ grew.
So there will be times
the church likewise grows in maturity. I mean, this doesn't. It's not really like an argument. That like, did Christ remain a child?
No, I'm not making
no, of course not.
We're just having a conversation, right? All I'm saying is that at some point, right, when the church needs reform, right, for Catholicism, right, there will be accretions, and there will be the church.
Of course,
Moral
Reiner is a good example.
At some point, we all have to acknowledge throughout church history, right, there is accretions. The Catholic Church formally acknowledges that history is messy. Accretions are there because the church is not perfect.
Well, it's like a sine wave, like the
eliminate
ups and downs, right? I mean,
that's what they have the authority to identify.
But the church perseveres through it all,
I get it, but you get what I mean. They have the authority to identify what is an accretion. Wait, let me finish. They do have it, and they can remove it, and that's that, right? And they are guided by the Holy Spirit, right? End of story.
I guess
the question is not about whether there are accretions. The dispute between you and me will be, what are the accretions exactly?
Yeah, what are
they? Yeah. So
go on.
Because I'll let you finish. To kind of build off of what Hammer said with like the growing church, like obviously Jesus was a baby. He crapped his. You could say he crapped himself. You could probably argue like those moments where baby Jesus crapped himself were like probably moments of heresy, and the cleanup process was just the reforming happening. But the Christ, the body, is not corrupted just because he pooped himself.
Wait. John,
that's why I'm like, hold on, hear me out. I just wanted to bring that up just to see. I think it's kind of funny.
Was this poop divine? No, right?
So it's just like.
I mean, I think it would be. Unironically, I think it would be worthy of being made a relic. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. No, genuinely, like I'm not.
Yeah, it could be a relic. Yeah. I'm not even trying to bring up a relic. I'm just.
I don't think that's a controversial take. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
No, I mean technically it would be.
The foreskin is a relic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The Holy Prepuce.
I'm not saying. I'm not trying to bring up the. What I'm trying to say is, could you say that, just how the church grows and how Christ grows, moments of crap, you could say, pop up. Just how a baby craps himself. Baby Jesus crapped himself. Does that mean that Did
that make Jesus less divine? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
No, of course not. Well, what I would say is that his crap and his piss is human nature.
It would probably be
divine.
Hey, Martin Luther's here. What the heck?
That is. It's also no.
Did I commit a heresy? Did I create Rileyism?
No.
Dude, this is starting to sound like a Martin Luther conversation. The poop and piss and.
Come on, holy poop and holy piss, like no.
I would call it the holy piss.
It reflects less on what it is and more on who it's from, right? That's the point. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But they're not mixed, right? They're not merged together. They're distinct, man.
Hey, do you remember the heresy?
Part of the divine nature.
Do you remember the heresy regarding
I think this is a good way to close off for me. You guys can continue if you want, but I got to go to bed. I work in the morning.
I do too. Yeah.
God bless you all.
Hey, it was amazing to talk to you, Apostle and Mike. It was amazing to meet you, man. You're awesome.
You too.
It was great having you guys. Real quick, let me just do the sign off, and I just wanted to mention one heresy that was a persistent one was or discussion was the idea that Jesus persisted in his presence through our digestive tracts and became fecal matter was a hotly contested one in the 11th century. I'm glad we ended up on the right end of that debate. But yes, so no, thank you everybody for joining. Please like, comment, subscribe on this if you want to see more awesome content. Go check out Jun's channel, Acolyte Insights channel, and Disciple Mike's channel. These guys are awesome. Tomorrow I'm going to be live with Catholic Christian. We're going to be talking about faith and conversion and a few other topics. So thanks everybody for watching, and God bless you all.
God bless you guys.
Bye guys.
God bless you guys.